The Oakland Raiders have traded the 38th pick to the Buffalo Bills. With the 38th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select Cody Ford, tackle, Oklahoma.
I told you, man, that was my guy when the night opened for the Jaguars at 38. Obviously, they made the move up to get Jawan Taylor. I don't think they got a running back that's going to survive old age this season up in Buffalo. But if they do, they just got a big hog molly to run behind in Cody Ford out of Oklahoma. Eric Wood, the former Bill, making that pick. Bob, how did Buffalo get a hold of that selection?
First of all, LaShawn McCoy doing the Avengers spoiler thing. I don't know if he's going to make it.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, I'm not even looking at the screen.
The Buffalo gave up the 40th and 100 pick, 158 to get the 38th pick.
All right, we got Byron Lambert joining us on set, and because we like him so much, we kept Alex Dunlap around as well. But Byron, what your impressions of the first half dozen plus picks of tonight?
Well, I can't believe how many good offensive linemen keep coming out of OU. They got two more guys coming behind this. That place is a real factory. And then that Deebo Samuel pick, a little bit of a surprise. Just a beloved, cherished prospect amongst the whole entire draft community, but a real surprise there. I think. Do you like
the landing spot for him from a fantasy perspective, short and long term?
Yeah, it's a good spot. I'm not sure it's an amazing spot, but it's a good spot.
Okay, so I think Jeff Ratcliffe, you were kind of more of a just turning up your nose at that spot amongst the panel. You're probably the most negative on San Fran just as being a landing spot in general, would you say?
For fantasy purposes.
Yeah.
That's all
Obviously,
I care about.
That's all we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, from a football standpoint, yeah, I get it, and I have no problem with it, but as I said, there's just not enough meat on the bone. Initial projection here, 42 catches, 516 yards, 3.5 touchdowns is where it rounded out to. That's nothing right there. That's like 70th best wide receiver. It's not going to do you anything, at least in the short term. We gotta see him establish a larger target share, and I just don't think that's going to happen.
All right, here's what we've seen come off the board. Byron Murphy, the corner, going to Arizona. Rock Ya-Sin, another corner, going to the Colts. The Jaguars trade up for Jawan Taylor, the tackle out of Florida. Deebo Samuel to San Francisco. We just discussed the Panthers move in to get Greg Little, the tackle out of Ole Miss, and then Cody Ford goes to the Buffalo Bills. So let's head to Bob Harris for Bob's best available. What do you got, Bob?
My best available. Drew Lock at quarterback, and there's talk that both Oakland and Miami have their eye on him. So we'll see how that plays out with Oakland moving back. Will Greer's also available there. Wide receiver, we have A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, Irv Smith at tight end, Jay Sternberger also at tight end, looking good as well. Running backs, David Montgomery, Damian Harris, Daryl Henderson, Miles Sanders, all should be going at some point.
Yeah, I mean, we think it will happen. But again, the NFL's not picking to make our fantasy teams happy. There are only so many quality big men, and you're seeing that right now. Corners, they got pushed out of the first round. Greedy Williams is still sitting out there. And somebody is probably going to be very happy with the value they get on him. So it's understandable to me that these linemen are coming off the board because there are only so many guys built like this. When they're gone, you're not going to get comparable players, whereas you might get a comparable wide receiver, whoever you can take right now in the third round, at least from an NFL team's perspective, John.
Look, I'm not against teams taking offensive linemen, period. So the Buffalo Bills have done a pretty nice job here adding to this O-line this year.
All right, we're going to get the pick. Coming up right now is the Tampa Bay Bucs are on the clock, a rare pick that hasn't been traded. Here we go.
Nashville, you are killing it this week. With the 39th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Sean Bunting, DB, Central Michigan.
All right, there you go. We can skip right past that one in terms of a fantasy discussion. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, every pick that goes by without a running back going makes Peyton Barber / Ronald Jones owners a little bit happier, right?
The Andre Ellington owners?
Well, hey, look.
Any owner.
That's me.
Does Ronald Jones have bounce back profile? Who likes Ronald Jones this year if you can get him at the right price? Anybody?
No, I did not like him last year, but he does get a fresh start here with the new coaching staff, and they're going to give him an opportunity here. But
they're talking
I'm
him up.
not expecting all that much. I mean, the dude should be a great receiver, but he's never shown it even going back to college.
By the way, it's early, so the Bucs still have plenty of time. I mean, you can address running back in the 5th round and all of a sudden snipe your presumptive starter. So nobody's safe, but every time that team comes up, and they don't select that position, like Peyton Barber, hey, he's not fancy, but if he's on your keeper team and you're looking at in a 12-team league, a third running back, you're like, okay, I feel a little bit better, breathe a little bit easier.
Miles Sanders would have been a nice pick for them. He could have been
Absolutely.
a 3-down back for them, but they pass him up. So Peyton Barber lives another round, I guess.
Right, and that's kind of the thing, right? I mean, if the right guy goes at the right spot, and maybe it won't become Miles Sanders. Miles Sanders could go to a team where he's a little bit blocked, right? And he's a complementary piece. And then maybe a lesser running back in our eyes goes to the Bucs around later, Byron, and all of a sudden his value goes way up.
And I hate to scrap my entire evaluation from last year just based on a 1-year sample with Ronald Jones, a very young rookie last year. I mean, he would have graded in the top 3 or 4 backs of this year's class just off the tape last year coming out. So you talk about Miles Sanders, he's everybody's number 2 or 3 this year. I think Jones is kind of in that pocket in terms of his evaluation coming out. So
right now the Raiders are on the clock. It felt like they've been on the clock 5 times tonight. I'm probably not right about that, but they've moved around a little bit. They started the night owning the 3rd pick of the evening. They moved back with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They moved back again with the Buffalo Bills. So we'll see if they exercise a selection here in just a few minutes. It's something the Raiders could add here, Alex, fantasy-wise. They've got their wideout set, maybe a tight end. Somebody's going to get Irv Smith at this point in time. It wouldn't be a surprise if he came off the board at any moment.
I believe Hanson, didn't you have him mocked to the Raiders yesterday?
But Sternberger. But I love Irv Smith too.
I mean, look at we know what that offense looks like, and look what they do with the tight end. Both guys really, really athletic. Irv Smith from great pedigree. I think that a tight end would be fantastic here if they can get one.
So we giggled a little bit initially with that Raiders first pick picking Clelin Ferrell. And we.
By the way, we're not going to go with Goodell's pronunciation. Ferrell, like everybody's been saying it his entire life. Right?
Fair enough. But I think lost in that conversation. But prior to the draft, we were thinking, so they get Josh Jacobs, running back late, and then they get a tight end too, because they lost Jared Cook, and that was kind of a popular thinking. Here they're going to get somebody at some point here, and they could get really good value on one of these guys that we thought, Irv Smith, we talked about possibly going in the first round.
All right, got about 2 minutes until the pick is announced. It is in, though, for the Oakland Raiders. About quarter till the top of the hour here. So let's do this step aside. We're only 7 picks deep, but it's going to the pace will be picking up very quickly as we've got the Raiders, the Broncos, the Bengals, and the Lions. The next 4 picks will come back, find out who Oakland has selected with their 4th pick of the 2019 NFL Draft. Mike Dempsey, Bob Harris, Byron Lambert, Alex Dunlap, John Hanson, Jeff Ratcliffe, and Howard Bender. It's the Sirius XM Fantasy Football NFL Draft Special on Fantasy Sports Radio. This one going to the Oakland Raiders. You heard the call by Charles Woodson, the former Raider great, Sirius XM Fantasy Football NFL Draft Special. Hour 1 of 5 hours of live draft coverage tonight from a fantasy standpoint. I'm just going to tell you this right now. Apparently, John Elway doesn't love Drew Lock. I think he hates Drew Lock because the Broncos on the clock are trading out of the spot right now. Drew Lock had to be thinking, here's my shot, baby. Here's my shot. Here's my shot. Get out of the green room. Get out of the green room.
He's wacko for Flacco, that John Elway.
Oh, my goodness. Look, it's not 100%. They may still hold on to the pick. There's talk that they may be trading out of the spot. It could end up being Drew Lock. We just don't know.
And if you had the under on the selection 39.5 for Drew Lock, it looks like that one's out the
chutes, right? That
one's the window.
That one's a loser.
That seemed like a good bet about 24 hours ago.
Yeah, let's see. It was 40.5 is what we had Drew Lock in terms
was
of
it
draft
40.5?
position.
Okay.
Yes,
I saw 39.5.
40.5. So that would put, what was that pick 40 a moment ago by the Raiders? So it was a question, would he go before Denver was on the clock? Maybe somebody trading in there. Denver did exercise the pick, so maybe I was premature in saying Elway. Look, he may still not pick Drew Lock here. Imagine if he took Will Grier. How Drew Lock would feel right now. Where's the fantasy value to be found in Denver this year, Jeff?
Man, I mean, Philip Lindsay, after last year, I think Royce Freeman is an interesting value as well, because I don't think the book's entirely written on him. We were talking about Ronald Jones earlier, and I don't think the book's written on him either. And typically, you have to take stabs on some of those running backs in the middle rounds. Freeman's one of those guys right now. I don't know about the wide receivers. We got to see what happens with Manny Sanders. Is he going to be on the field in the first 6 weeks of the season? Probably not. That opens up stuff for Deshaun. That opens up stuff for Cortland. But
who do you prefer out of those two?
Well, if we can say that Manny Sanders is not on the field, it might be Deshaun because of his PPR prowess.
All right, Bob Harris.
Just building off what Jeff said, about Royce Freeman, his former colleague Mike Clay, now with ESPN and with us, noted last season the yards after contact were great for Freeman, not so much for Lindsay, who was benefiting from some open paths early in his runs.
He was playing against a lot of sub-package defense, whereas Royce was in there more against space defense.
All right, the Broncos pick is in. And then they've got another pick immediately because they just traded into Cincinnati's spot. Behind them, Al Wilson, the former Bronco linebacker, will be making the call. So let's head to the podium and listen into the pick.
What's up, Nashville? What's up, Nashville? It's your boy. I'm here, baby. How about them Vols? How about them Broncos? Much love. With the 41st pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Dalton Reisner, Kansas State.
Great value.
Yeah,
I mean, great value. And there may be one or two others. I think you're seeing the supply of potential rookie starting tackles get exhausted now pretty quickly with this first bevy of picks. We've seen Taylor, we've seen Ford, we've seen Reisner, we've had another one come off the board,
Greg
Little, right? So that's four guys right there. The NFL knows what they're doing. Got to get the big bodies while they're available.
Plus, Mike Munchak added here. So I think you asked the question earlier about where's the value in Denver, and I would lean toward the backfield. And if Philip Lindsay, I understand the points about Royce Freeman, but if Philip Lindsay is healthy now with his upgraded offensive line, keep in mind they added Juwan James, right tackle from the Miami Dolphins. This could be a top 12 line this year, which I think would bode very well for Phil Lindsay. I want to see Phil Lindsay get involved more in the passing game.
We can also say, with the addition of Juwan James, Dalton doesn't have to just play tackle. He can certainly play guard. They even worked him there during the Senior Bowl.
Great kid, man. I saw a piece on NFL Network. Has befriended everyone from old ladies,
it's amazing.
Right to
kids,
handicapped kids, and treats them with such respect. They have such a reverence for this guy. What a phenomenal person it seems like the Denver Broncos are getting. Much like Philip Lindsay, by the way. Saw an ESPN piece on him in the lead up to the draft over the last week, and what a great piece of just the film on the power of perseverance and believing in your own ability. And you got to remember, at that position particularly, no matter how late they come off the board, they can still make a fantasy football impact for you. Now, Bob, Cincinnati traded with the Broncos, so the Broncos have another pick. Al Wilson could try to get the reaction from a Nashville crowd, from a Knoxville school. I don't know if he realizes they're not going to give him what he's looking for. He can try again in a minute, but how did the Broncos get to this spot?
They gave up the 52nd, 125th, and 182nd pick to the Bengals for that number 42 spot.
All right, so 125 and 182 to move up the 10 spots from 52 to 42.
This would be a very intriguing pick. Drew Lock here.
That could be.
And
Absolutely.
it looks like it might be heading that way.
So you go with Noah Fant. You get an athletic tight end. We haven't had a great tight end in Denver since like maybe Tony Scheffler, like 12 years ago. You get more upgrades to the offensive line, and then boom, your franchise quarterback here. This would be pretty nice.
Is there scuttlebutt, Bob, that Locke is going to be the selection?
There is nothing definitive, but the scuttlebutt is that they're looking at quarterback.
Well, I mean, look, it makes sense, and if you're Denver, they took as long as they could with the pick on the clock. Felt like Reisner was the guy they had to have, and if we can get him and still get Drew Lock and not pay the farm, okay, you know what? Bring him in. There's not any pressure on Drew Lock to be a presumptive starter.
No.
So we'll see if Drew Lock's going to get that opportunity. Long term, Byron, how do you feel about him? Do you think this guy is a viable long-term starter potentially for the Broncos?
I mean, he has a little bit of Josh Allen, a little Carson Wentz to his profile. I don't like him as much as either of those guys coming out. But, yeah, I do think that he's a guy that if you can get in there and polish him up, he's got enticing size, arm strength, athleticism. It's not a Patrick Mahomes arm, but it is probably a Carson Wentz level arm. He's a good player, and John Elway's done it right. I think Elway crushed the draft last year. He gets a lot of hate. I think he gets a little credit for the way he's playing this thing here. And Dalton Reisner, I thought he was the best player at the entire Senior Bowl.
I think he gets the quote-unquote hate because he fell into Peyton Manning, who wanted to come play for them, and he's all of a sudden seen as a quarterback finder, and he hasn't found anyone who's worth a damn at that position up until this point. We'll see if he takes a shot here. Look, Locke's got a little Elway in him as well. Elway was a guy, John, we remember.
Athletic.
That was a guy, his completion percentage was nothing to write home about, you know, and but he would make the play at the right time, and he had moxie, and he believed in himself. And if you watch anything about Drew Lock in this draft process, that's the kind of personality that he carries. So the pick is in for the Broncos, and the suspense will be ended here very shortly. We'll find out if they get a guy that many thought they would take with the 10th overall selection in the draft. They get it at a pretty reasonable price to pay to move up 10 spots here in round number 2 after deciding to select the right tackle of the future, let's call him, in Dalton Reisner, or however they plan to utilize him along that offensive line. Well, less than 60 seconds from going to the podium, Al Wilson to make the walk back up again. If it is Locke, how soon, Jeff, before he gets an opportunity to start some football games?
Potentially this year. I don't think it's as clear as the day one guys, but you figure that the writing's got to be on the wall relatively soon.
Yeah. Well, look, if Flacco gets off to a slow start, you don't want to overwhelm Drew Lock. You want to make sure if this, in fact, is him. We'll find out. But whoever that next quarterback is going to be, look, Flacco, like, hey, I'm all about bringing anybody to help this team as long as he doesn't play quarterback. That's going to be an interesting dynamic. I don't think he's there to play mentor to anybody. Mm-hmm. So we'll see if it, in fact, is Drew Lock and how that thing fits with the folks out in the Mile High. Denver's pick is in. Al Wilson making his way to the podium. So once again, let's head there live in Nashville to find out the Broncos pick.
So the Cincinnati Bengals have traded the 42nd pick to the Denver Broncos. And with the 42nd pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Drew Lock, Missouri.
There you go. All right. Drew Lock is the guy. We can talk about him more in hour number 2 because we're coming to the end of our first hour of coverage. Byron Lambert, Alex Dunlap of Roster Watch, John Hansen, the guru of Sirius XM Fantasy Football fame, Bob Harris, my co-host with Football Diehards. I'm Mike Dempsey, Jeff Ratcliffe of Pro Football Focus, and Howard Bender of the Fantasy Alarm. Folks, we invite you to watch video of the draft coverage we've got led by Howard on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at SiriusXM Fantasy. And please check out the latest story on our Instagram page for more behind-the-scenes footage. Find out what it's like to be on the exciting set of a radio show when we go to break. 4 hours to go. Stick with us or live from the Fantasy Football Command Center, the SiriusXM Fantasy Football NFL Draft Special on Fantasy Sports Radio. Stick around.
Football to give you more ways to have fun.
To infinity.
30 to the podium? Okay. Will we get to it?
Grow your sports investments by listening to Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio.
You're a genius. Come on.
All right, Jelani Tavai, the linebacker out of Hawaii. Yes, that Jelani Tavai goes to the Detroit Lions with the 11th pick of round 2. The Packers are on the clock. The pick is in. James Lofton going to announce that selection just seconds away right now, so let's head there now.
All right. Now, this is going to be simple, and it's going to be so much fun. It's the easiest team cheer. We need to do it. Go, Pack, go. 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 Fantastic. With the 44th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Elton Jenkins, guard, Mississippi State.
And they're just raining on our fantasy parade so far tonight. I mean, other than Debo popping up with his head above water, he's like, look at me, skill position guy. All right, Rams were on the clock. Their Super Bowl opponent, the Patriots, though, own the pick now as they have made a move. Who wants to speculate? What are the Patriots coming up for, John?
Irv Smith.
There you go, right? I mean,
Lock
it could have been the 32nd pick in the draft, and no one would have batted an eye.
Nope.
I don't know if it's a lock, but, because the Patriots move for value and tight ends are falling. So, we'll see, but it makes logical sense that Irv Smith could be a target here.
And Bill Belichick, obviously, is Nick Saban's boy, and I'm sure Saban has nothing but great things to say about Irv Smith, who we interviewed at the Combine. Is a great kid. He's a 3-down player, probably the best route runner at the tight end position here. He can block. He's obviously no Gronkowski, but he will be a plug-and-play guy, I would believe.
Yeah, got a little run after the catch, too, so...
Yeah, no, he's a great player.
All right, we'll see. Anybody else want to take a stab? If it's not Irv Smith, any other everybody on board that it is Irv Smith, or do you think the Patriots are making a move for something else?
Well, I've personally learned to never try and predict what Bill Belichick.
Well, you're probably smart,
but probably going for value. So like a guy like Greedy Williams sitting out there that we thought could have gone way earlier. Maybe
wide receiver still a huge need.
Yeah, AJ Brown's still there. So there's some value at all across the board.
Speaking of AJ Brown, the Colts can still make me happy after trading out of the second pick of round 2. They are on deck right now. I think AJ Brown going to Indianapolis is just a beautiful fantasy marriage made in heaven. They're showing video on TV of Drew Lock's relief finally being selected by the Denver Broncos. Good for him, though, man. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, you're especially kudos to anybody who comes to the green room and then comes back to the green room, for the next night. You got a pair on you. You know what? Your life doesn't end after one night of semi-embarrassment. If the worst thing you have to go through is you're going to make a few less $1 million initially out of school, well, boo-hoo, right?
I mean, he looks a little like Jay Cutler, but he's much less surly than Mr. Jay Cutler.
Well, you just don't want anybody to have that burden, right? Any kind of comparison to Jay Cutler right now. So the pick is in for the Patriots. They are officially have made the selection. We'll get some details when we can on what they gave up with the Rams. Byron, while we have a moment, though, catch us up on some of the prop bets that were in play coming into round 2. What's hit or hasn't hit already?
Sure. It looks like we just officially hit the over on Drew Lock, who we had him at 39.5. He just went at, pick 42 to the Denver Broncos. I know we had DK Metcalf at pick 40.5. It looks like that over is going to hit. And speaking of the players left in the green room, DK Metcalf and Greedy Williams, the two guys left on the board here. Metcalf was a minus 120 this morning, and Greedy Williams was a plus 340 over there. And then as far as the wide receivers, whoever had that Debo Samuel pick hit a plus 300 as being the first wide receiver off the board in round 2 today.
All right, think about this. Drew Lock, I had the over-under at 40.5. So depending on where you looked, right? If it was 41.5, though, it depended on which of the 2 back-to-back picks the Broncos used on him, right? I mean, how crazy is that? Because the 41st pick was the one which they had, and then the 42nd pick became the one which they acquired.
They didn't build all those casinos without knowing.
They went over on all of it. Bob, trade details. What did the Patriots give up to get the Rams selection?
Yeah, to move up from 56 to 45, they added in the 101.
Okay, so there you go. That seems like maybe a third-round compensatory range right there.
Right. And remember, the Rams have some needs maybe at running back even, and maybe that's in the sweet spot.
All right.
There.
By the way, picking or announcing the selection for the Patriots, Dante Hightower will make that. The Colts are out of there, as the Cleveland Browns are now on the clock with the pick officially in for the New England Patriots. So it's been a great night for trading. If you like NFL draft action, it's been a lot of fun. Fantasy specific, not as great as it could be, but still we expect a rush of wide receiver and running back talent. We're under 10 seconds. So Dante Hightower making the announcement for the New England Patriots. Who did they trade up? Who is the apple of Bill Belichick's eye? Let's find out right now.
The Los Angeles Rams have traded the 45th pick to the New England Patriots. And with the 45th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the champs select Juwan Williams, DB, Vanderbilt.
There you go. The defensive back. Alex wins the night so far. I've learned not to try to predict what Bill Belichick is going to do.
It's too obvious.
It made sense, right?
Yeah.
But I just, like, whether it's Sternberger or it's Josh Wilson or any number of guys, I think he'll find a guy with traits. You're not going to find the next Gronk either way. And they'll find a tight end if they want to add a tight end in this draft. It doesn't have to be Irv Smith. Who knows? Irv Smith's taking a little slide right now.
Dawson Knox fantasy might come
Dawson
through.
Knox is a guy, Bob. So Indy traded out of the spot. Again, what do they get from Cleveland for their trouble?
They give up that 46. To get that 46, they gave up the 49th and 144th.
All right, so for a 3-spot drop, they had the 144th pick in the draft. And Cleveland, who's Cleveland making a move for? Right here, guys. Not going to be a running back. We know that.
Maybe not a wide receiver either.
You wouldn't think it'd be a wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns. They're getting pretty loaded on the defensive side.
At the current rate, though, we're going to have nothing but Colts and Seahawks picks as we head into
the Colts are just moving back and back.
Seahawks
and back.
too.
Yeah, you're right about that. Anybody have an idea?
Well, look, I'd like to see him take an offensive lineman.
I'm with John on that. I mean, we're getting so excited about the backfield and the pass catchers and Mayfield. We want an offensive line to get that whole thing started, right?
Yeah,
and issue at right tackle.
We've had a bunch of linemen come off the board. So if you're a team that's like, I'm getting a little nervous, I got one more guy that I feel like could come in and maybe start for me right now, I'm not going to wait. I'll give up the 144th pick to make sure I can move up and secure that player. So that's certainly a position that makes some sense. The Browns officially have not submitted the pick, but you have to believe that they know exactly who they're taking when they make a move like that, a targeted move here in round number 2. So when the Browns pick, Bob, like you mentioned, hey, guess who's up next? Seattle, because they're accumulating all these picks. It went through the hands of the Carolina Panthers to get there. Then the Miami Dolphins have a shot there. Could we see a trade potentially with Josh Rosen involving Miami's second-round pick? That was the one team with the speculation out there today.
Talk, and it would be this pick.
It could be this pick, or it could be Rosen and something for this pick, right? Or it becomes a situation that's at a third plus today. Right now. So Cleveland seeing a guy that they think is a value, whoever that is, and making a 3-spot move. We're going to find out here in seconds. So Seattle and Miami to follow, and then if they ever stick, the Indianapolis Colts will make a selection at some point in this draft.
The Patriots supposedly were arguing, were trying to decide between Harry and Williams at that 32nd, and they ended up with both of them.
Oh, okay. So there you go. Well, that doesn't mean they're right always, but they got what they wanted, which never makes anybody really happy, right?
We'll see about N'Keal Harry. My contention is the Patriots have not drafted a good wide receiver in the first round in 40 years.
All right. We're going to have – how about the Jim Brown? We'll be making the – is he going to go – let's have it go Browns chant? I doubt it, right?
Probably
not. Come on. Know your crowd out here. You only have a tiny section of the crowd is your fan base. I don't think they understand how that does not play on the television broadcast. But Jim Brown will make the pick for the Cleveland Browns, or make the announcement of the pick for the Cleveland Browns here coming up in just a second. And we'll find out who that is.
I will say Reggie Wayne's Drew Pearson impersonation at this one was pretty good.
That's not bad. Reggie Wayne loves to flap the jaws too. He's one of the
when you're at the home of a rival.
No, yeah, no doubt, right? And look, if you have something over them and there's nothing they can do about it, you beat us 3 times in 10 years, that kind of thing. It's kind of fun. But James Lofton expecting a "Go Pack Go" chant to break out in Nashville, Tennessee. God bless you, James. It's just not going to happen. All right, so the Cleveland Browns pick is in. Obviously, they had a target. We're under a half a minute to find out who that is, with arguably the greatest running back of all time making the announcement. Jim Brown, the Hall of Famer, who, I tell you what, I've done Radio Row 15 years at the Super Bowl, and there are 3 guys that stop traffic more than anybody. Jim Brown's in the top 3. Who am I thinking of? Former Dallas quarterback Roger Staubach and Joe Namath. Those are the 3. When they're in the room, even the old timers stop and go, "Oh, he's here."
What about Tebow?
In a different way. Trust me, though, there was a little mania when he came in. But when you want to talk about the respect of everyone in the room stopping and go, "Oh, he's here." Okay.
Barry's got a little bit of that too.
All right. So Jim Brown making the pick for the Cleveland Browns, who traded into Indy's spot. Let's head to the podium and find out what that pick is going to be or not going to go. Now, I think Jim Brown's taking his time making his way up there. Here we go.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you very much. You're very gracious. And I love it from my heart. Thank you. The Indianapolis Colts have traded the 46th pick to the Cleveland Browns. With the 46 picks in 2013 NFL draft, the Cleveland Browns select Greedy Williams.
I told you.
All right, Greedy Williams.
I told you.
They
had to get up in front of Seattle to do it, man. That's a long corner. That's a long, fast corner. The corner is one of the top needs for these guys. You always got to look at the team that they're jumping. We talked about it last night.
I'd almost call that a turn back the clock pick.
But, you think the LSU guys got in there here?
Yeah, but now you're teaming them with Denzel Ward, so that's a nice 1-2 punch there at corner.
Look, here are the corners that come off the board already. Byron Murphy, Rock Ya-Sin. Who else have we seen? Sean Bunting has been selected. Trayvon Mullen has gone, and Jawan Williams, just a pick before, to the New England Patriots. Greedy Williams. So that's like a half dozen corners off the board. And again, you never see 29 picks go by in the NFL draft without one being taken, and we saw that last night. So there weren't a bunch of first-round guys. The value at cornerback and the offensive line is where the NFL has been making their marks.
With that pick, is it officially DK Metcalf is the lonely only back there in the green?
DK Metcalf wins or wins. He was the shortest odds. Vegas knows what they're doing. Yep. He was minus 120, so bet 120 to win 100 that he would be the last standing. That's a good call there, Alex, as Greedy Williams was plus 340, and if you had that, 3.5 to 1, basically, you were kind of rubbing your hands together a little bit right here. Hey, somebody come on up and get DK Metcalf. Patriots, is that the move? But no, Cody Ford, Jawan Taylor, and Drew Lock had already been selected out of the green room holdovers from yesterday. Seattle has exercised the pick, which is news in of itself, Bob. They have not traded out of the selection, and we'll find out who the pick is coming up here, but we'll find that out after our next timeout as we are live in Nashville. The show continues on Instagram at SiriusXM Fantasy. Howard Bender with all of our social media coverage from the Fantasy Alarm, doing a great job on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's a SiriusXM Fantasy Football NFL Draft Special. We're live from the Fantasy Football Command Center in Nashville, Tennessee on Fantasy Sports Radio.
You're up, Howard.
What's going on, everybody? Howard Bender here from Fantasy Alarm and Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. We are day 2 here, round 2 of the NFL Draft with your fantasy football update. And while we thought it was going to be a wide receiver running back bonanza here in round 2, it has been just the opposite. Defensive backs all around. We do have a couple of interesting ones, though, to talk about. Jawan Taylor goes to Jacksonville. That increases the value of Leonard Fournette. San Francisco ends up taking wide receiver Deebo Samuel, so you can look at him as a guy who's going to get some targets, but you can also look at that San Francisco defense for some punt and kick return action. Offensive lineman help goes to Carolina and Buffalo with Greg Little and Cody Ford. That should help LaShawn McCoy. That should help Christian McCaffrey, and whichever Carolina running back gets taken. Come on, guys. Let's get some wide receivers. Let's get some running backs in here. We need it for fantasy football, please. Back to you, Mike Dempsey.
With the 32nd pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Deebo Samuel. South Carolina.
I thought Deebo would slip a little bit, but this is a great sign. A great plug-and-play starter here, I think, for fantasy. He's a physical dude. Team him up with Pettis.
Crossing route, Deebo dives into the end zone. Touchdown, Carolina. All right. Touchdown, Deebo Samuel.
I do not like this fit. There's no targets to go around here. This is the problem. We have running backs catching the ball out of the backfield. We have George Kittle there. I mean, the highest target share that I had for a wide receiver on this team was 19%. That's not going to Deebo. That's not enough right there. I think he sees a 13% share.
Fight. Hanson, Radcliffe, who you got? I love it, right? And that's what we want, right? And look, it can't be just homogenous. Everybody can't agree on everything. How boring would that be? First of all, boring enough that we've only had one real skill position guy that's going to impact us at all in 2019, likely be selected so far, and that's Deebo Samuel. John's bullish. And we got bearish Jeff Ratcliffe over here, and that's okay.
And invested Bob Harris.
Yes, Harris has been scooping up in rookie drafts in the last few weeks like crazy.
I'm not going to dispute the notion that, Kittle's a stud, the running backs can catch the ball, but the bottom line is, at the end of the day, about 2 hours ago, the Niners' best receiver has a career 27 catches on his resume, and that's Dante Pettis. So in that regard, there is a great opportunity there for Deebo.
Deuce McAllister making the selection announcement for the New Orleans Saints. This is an obvious one. This is talked about a lot today, the possibility of this happening. Eric McCoy, the center, going there. You got to protect Drew Brees up the middle. It's been the entirety of his career. Protect him up the middle. He'll worry about the edges, and he'll make you pay. And so the Saints move up into the Dolphins spot to make this acquisition here with the 16th pick. So the Dolphins move down 14 spots. And, Bob, in doing so, the rumors are that they're trying to keep that second rounder in play as a viable piece to go get Josh Rosen, but not just giving up the second rounder. And they've moved back with New Orleans. Right. We'll get the details. So they've added picks along with it. So, I mean, Rosen right now is going for the price of a can of tuna, basically.
Right. And, that was one of the things we heard about the Cardinals. They weren't going to give him away. Maybe they'd be willing to keep him if they needed to. I think that was all talk. They need to get rid of him. He unfollowed them on the Instagram. How can he stick around?
How about that?
Right? But the Dolphins now have the 62nd pick, and this has been talked about all day. The Dolphins may be making this move. There was said to be some interest from them in Drew Lock. Now that he's gone, it seems like maybe Josh Rosen is a guy they'll be looking at.
Bob, did Joe Flacco unfollow the Broncos?
He did not yet.
Okay, just checking.
Not yet. Give him a minute.
Can we just point out that Bob called it the Instagram? Let's just point that out there.
He does
the old man on the panel.
He does that to highlight the fact that he's old and beautiful. Alex Dunlap, Eric McCoy, center out of Texas A&M. What do you think?
Well, you have Unger retiring, of course,
right?
And it's so. I mean, and he is one of the guys. Lance Zierlein is a dude who I trust a whole lot with his offensive line evaluation. He was one of Lance Zierlein's top 3 or 4 interior offensive line players. He's a guy that we've gotten to see down in Texas quite a bit. I think that he's going to be a plug and play, ready to go guy. What I cannot believe is that they managed to, in trading down to 62, these Saints, they trade away they traded away a second round pick next year. I mean,
is that what they gave up in this deal?
Yeah, they had.
Do you have the trade details? I haven't seen them.
The details came up. It was 60. It was 60. They traded away 48. They got 62. Some other
A low second rounder.
You know what? What is
a
next
second
year?
rounder.
What is next year when you're in the Drew Brees window? Honestly,
Yeah,
if you're that and you think this guy's a step in, walk in the door, starting center, they're like, we'll worry about next year.
Yeah, but the Dolphins talk about a team that's loading up for the future, man. That's a big time haul for
Colts are on the clock, by the way. The pick is in, so the Colts will make a selection here.
So the Dolphins now have an additional second, an additional fourth, and an additional sixth.
Final thought on the Saints, by the way. Who cares about next year when we're going to take Alvin Kamara in the top 5 and losing Max Unger and have some issues in the interior? I think this solidifies their O-line for Kamara.
Yeah, which is ultimately the best benefit we get out of it tonight.
And Brees, because you can get to Brees if you rush him up the middle.
Sure, but I think, in terms of who's going to anchor more fantasy championships, Alvin Kamara much more likely than Drew Brees is in 2019. So the Colts on the clock. And again, the pick is in. Position, Byron Lambert. Which way do you think the Colts are going to go right here? What do you think?
I mean, it sure does feel like a team that could keep beefing up the defensive side of the football.
Okay.
And I feel like there's been a lot of value along the defensive line and still at the defensive backfield in this draft.
Still a lot of value at wide receiver, too.
All right. There is.
Mike Dempsey just with a sour face over there because he's dying for A.J. Brown.
Look, you've had how many opportunities,
it
Chris
is right
Ballard,
in their lap.
And they may not love A.J. Brown. Obviously, they don't love any one of these guys more so than the rest of these guys, right? Because they keep moving back. And who knows if this pick is even a wide receiver, right? So the value kind of maybe is flat in people's eyes, in their opinion, at the position. Yeah, DK Metcalf is a physical specimen that stands out from the rest, but as a football player, is he any better than some of these guys? He may not even be in the top 3 on some teams' list on what's available right now.
Anybody holding Deion Kane in Dynasty? Because,
Matt Deutsch, front row.
Chris Ballard was talking him up at the Combine, the general manager, and they really like what they saw out of him before he got injured.
If Matt Deutsch has his way, Deion Kane and Marlon Mack will lead every one of his teams to a fantasy dynasty championship this year. Less than a half minute till we find out what the Colts are up to. And they didn't make a pick at all yesterday, right? Because they traded out.
No, they have tons of capital, and they've added to that today.
And their division champs coming back.
At some point, they'll be able to draft every single wide receiver on the board because they'll have be the only team with picks left.
It's a team with the luxury of having a strong offensive line, trading away to teams that may be in play for offensive linemen. Let's head to the podium right now, and announcing the selection is, once again, Reggie Wayne.
We straight? We good? All right, because I got clips. I got heat. All right, we straight. With the 49th pick of the 2019 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Ben Banogu, linebacker, TCU.
All right. By the way, Rock Ya-Sin, they did exercise the second pick tonight on Rock Ya-Sin. So they made 2 picks. Byron, you got the side of the football right. You mentioned the other 2 units. So what are you going to do? Impossible to know. So Colts go with a linebacker, and Colts fans are waiting. Look, this lady has no idea. If you're watching the broadcast, she's waiting with anticipation for the name to be announced. Then it's Ben Banogu. She has no idea. She starts pumping her fist like she is
not alone.
They just took the next Patrick Mahomes once again, ladies and gentlemen. Ben Banogu, outside linebacker from TCU. Is he the first pure, just outside, non-pass rush specific edge rush type linebacker that's gone in this year's draft?
If you don't consider Josh Allen that, then yeah.
Yeah, I think Josh Allen is more of an edge to me, So
Chase Winovich would have made some sense for them.
Chase Winovich is still sitting out there, But you wonder, John, NFL folks is a Michigan Wolverine, and some people, a lot of draft pundits, felt that Chase Winovich should be off the board in the top 40 picks. Great production. Hey, he outproduced Rashawn Gary. Well, then the scouts would tell you, Rashawn Gary's over here drawing double and triple teams, and Chase Winovich is running around, single blocked, and that's why he was so productive. But still, with the productivity, wouldn't shock us at all if he comes off the board sometime before the end of round 2. Jalen Ferguson, another pass rusher in a dwindling lot. Because we saw
very productive,
super productive. And we just saw so many of them fly off the board yesterday that we're seeing some other positions get filled in. The Vikings are on the clock, followed by the Tennessee Titans. John, your Vikings, who do you want to see him grab right here?
I was hoping Cody Ford would have slipped to them. That was a pipe dream. So I'm not real sure if there's an offensive lineman worth taking here. I will say the wide receiver core here is not very good. Once you get behind Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, Treadwell's a bust. Don Beebe's son, Chad, is hanging in there. And I know Matt Deutsch he owns him in Dynasty, which is probably the kiss of death, so you can cut him now if you're out there.
No, he's teaming up with Marlon Mack and Deion Kane. You haven't heard?
Here you go, but he would be fascinating because, no offense to Kyle Rudolph, but Kyle Rudolph looks like he's 47. Okay, Irv Smith is on the board, and so is Jay Sternberger. That would be very intriguing if they went tight end. I doubt it, but I'd love it.
Carl Eller
they do every year.
Will make the announcement here, and we'll keep it here before the bottom of the hour. We'll get the Vikings pick in. As the pick is in, we'll get the announcement of who that will be in less than a half minute. Then we'll step aside and reset for the second half of hour number 2. 5 hours of live pick-by-pick coverage tonight. I'm Mike Dempsey along with Bob Harris, Jeff Radcliffe, Byron Lambert, Alex Dunlap, John Hansen, and Howard Bender with wall-to-wall coverage all evening long. So keep it here with us. Carl Eller, the Vikings great, now making his way to the podium. So once again, let's head to the mics in Nashville to find out who the Vikings select with their pick.
With the 50th pick in the 2019 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Irv Smith.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. I stepped on a Hall of Famer. Sorry, Carl Eller. I apologize for that. He made the announcement there. Hansen gave a fist pump. He said he would like it, but he didn't expect it to happen. So I'm not giving him credit for his second-round mock draft, Bob, for the selection of Irv Smith. That's a good pull at the last second right there as you're kind of going through things. We'll come back on the other side, talk about this as a fantasy destination, short and long-term for Irv Smith. Certainly not the immediate short-term impact he might have had in some other places, but not the worst landing spot either in a prolific offense with a lot of other targets that folks need to concentrate on. It is the Sirius XM Fantasy Football NFL Draft Special, Day 2, as we're live at the Command Center in Nashville, Tennessee on Fantasy Sports Radio.
What's going on, everybody? Howard Bender here from Fantasy Alarm and Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. I'm with my man Alex Dunlap from Roster Watch. Been a very interesting second round, to say the least. When we were moving from the desk downstairs to up here, Alex, the question that you turned and you asked me was, are we looking at all the wide receivers dropping in value, and then just as we're about to go on air, A.J. Brown heads over to the Tennessee Titans, and you don't seem to like that at all. So let's go.
No.
The wide receivers are getting picked, dude, or they're not.
No, they're going to get picked. A.J. Brown's the best wide receiver in this class. He was going to get picked. It's just Tennessee. You cannot take an Uber in this town without the driver telling you how much they hate Marcus Mariota. I mean, it literally, man. Our guy Dave Kitchen here on the channel, he likes him, but Mariota has. I mean, he's been a disappointment from not just from a fantasy perspective, but also from a real life NFL perspective. I'm not sure that he's going to be able to vault AJ Brown. AJ Brown is a technician, and he was, a 75.8% spark athlete who drew comparisons to Juju Smith-Schuster and Michael Thomas through this process. He's an unbelievable prospect, and we've seen he went in the draft before DK Metcalf, who was all anybody wanted to talk about, his teammate, because he was much more productive. He was the alpha dog that took over football games. Now, the one silver lining I see for AJ Brown is I think he's a better prospect than Corey Davis. So I think there's a chance that he could take over. They are different kinds of players, though. A.J. Brown played mostly out of the slot. Whenever DK Metcalf was hurt, he moved outside, but he played a lot out of the slot, super productive there. We do know that the Titans have addressed the slot wide receiver position by bringing in Adam Humphries, so I think we're going to see him a lot, A.J. Brown a lot at the flanker or the Z position. And that's something that he'll be fine at because he won't need to face as much press, which is something that people worry a little bit about with him because playing out of the slot, you don't ever play press. You're up against nickel corners with option routes and two-way goes. So I guess I like that. Maybe your opposite Corey Davis, can that open things up for you? Maybe. But for one, I don't trust Marcus Mariota to get him the football. Two, I think that this is a team that needs to pound the football with our boy King Henry, the Beast.
Where is that jersey?
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's my spirit animal. It's my spirit animal. So as much as I love the way that things are stacking up for Derrick Henry, as much as I love A.J. Brown, my number one wide receiver in this class, and our consensus number one wide receiver in this class at Roster Watch, I hate putting TEN next to his name here in my spreadsheet and knowing that's where he went.
Yeah, it's definitely disappointing. Listen, I'm with you there. As far as Marcus Mariota goes, yeah, I mean, he had one or two shining moments so far in his career, and one of which was a fluke TD pass to himself.
He threw a pass to himself.
That was it. That was the only thing that he did. He threw a TD pass that bounced off a defender. He caught it. He ran in for a touchdown. That's Marcus Mariota's claim to fame. It's still better than the New York Jets and Mark Sanchez and the butt fumble, but it's still nothing more than a blooper. So I'm with you here on Marcus Mariota not being the guy. So now the question is listen.
And you're with every Uber driver that we've had.
And with every Uber driver out here in Tennessee. Come on, of course it is. You're in the hometown. That's what's going to happen here. You heard the ovation. Eddie George got a bigger ovation than Jim Brown did. And I mean, that just says it all right here about Tennessee. But I'm not gonna run down Tennessee. I'm not gonna run down Nashville here. What I'm running down here is what's up with the wide receivers, because we saw Marquise Brown as the only guy, as the first guy who went in the first round. We saw N'Keal Harry go with the last pick. Okay, and then
Deebo Samuel go to
Deebo
the San Francisco 49ers.
Why is DK Metcalf falling? Why is he falling, and where's he going to land?
He's not a polished receiver. He ran 3 routes in college. He ran a go route, he ran a hitch route, he ran a post route. And people say like, well, you get to the NFL, what the hell? I mean, that's what you expect. Like you get coaching at the NFL level, but I mean, you look at his 3-cone times, you look at his short shuttle times. These were bottom 2 and 3 percentile tests for this guy. So, dude, I mean, there's a place for a player like DK Metcalf. But if you're counting on him turning into a concise route runner that's going to be able to do everything that's asked of him across the whole entire route tree, and to be able to use that 4.33 explosion that he has in a straight line in the same way, I mean, his explosive measurables have shown us what we've. No, I mean, look at him. Just look at the guy. I mean, he's an uber athlete as far as in a straight line. But the agility scores show us, man. Like he could have a little bit of trouble.
So do you have a player comp for us? Somebody who's in the NFL right now who you could kind of equate to DK Metcalf with the limited routes? I mean, all I'm thinking about is right now is Will Fuller with the Texans getting that one pass, like a Tecmo Bowl play for the Texans where he catches touchdowns and that's it. But I don't know if that's necessarily a decent comp for Metcalf.
Well, it isn't a good comp because their body styles are so different. If I had to give one, I'd say Josh Gordon was a guy who didn't really have a extensive route tree, but he could just go up and out contest. And look, I mean, DK Metcalf can go up and out contest you for the football. He can run by your ass. Like he can get open and make plays in certain ways. He's not a developed, nuanced receiver. Maybe like Andre Johnson, he didn't have quite the agility. Yep. And maybe on the low end, I would say another guy that came out of the SEC who looked like the same sort of sculpted, just was the bronze statue of a man. That was Sammy Coates.
Oh, I thought that was me. Sammy Coates has hands made out of buttered stones, dude. Okay, I look like I ate Sammy Coates' hands.
I used to like to think of them like they were like wooden fingers because every time he caught it, it would seem like his fingers
Chubbs
like
McAllister.
It seemed like his hands were so bad that the football came near him and he kind of hurt him. Like he kind of took a little bit of them off the edges and stuff. But yeah, so I think that's sort of the range of outcomes for DK Metcalf. Hence the fall. I think in the media sometimes we fall in love with these guys' measurables in certain ways that maybe the NFL doesn't fall in love with in the same way when they rely so much on film. Whenever in the fantasy community, we can't help it. We're spreadsheet guys. We love analytics and numbers. We can't help it. Like college market share, like all the rest of this stuff. We take it into consideration. And with NFL teams, a lot of this stuff is relying on your scouts, relying on your feel, and relying on scheme fits.
Okay, so as far as the wideouts go, just give me a grade A through F here. Marquise Brown landing with the Ravens for fantasy owners.
For fantasy.
Strictly for fantasy.
Well, look, man, there's clearly a vacuum there. And so there's one way to look at it. Let's look at the positives. Lamar Jackson, young quarterback, young, good, winning quarterback, right? I mean, the future looks pretty bright with him. We've seen at the college level that he is capable of executing a more complicated offense than we've seen out of him thus far in the NFL. So you can think that I still think that there's juice that can be squeezed out of that fruit. I think he'll continue to improve, right? You also just have a complete. I mean, the starting wide receiver. I mean, I'm trying to think, it's Chris Moore and Jordan Lastly
and Willie Snead.
Willie Snead, is he still there?
So you're saying
they're going to ever be running any three wide receivers? Well, here's the other thing.
Maybe
they're
going
to be running. They're going to be running so much. They drafted like 3 tight ends last year. They're going to be getting the ball to Hayden Hurst. They're going to be getting the ball to Mark Andrews. Some of these guys. They're going to be throwing it to Mark Ingram. Can catch the football out of the backfield. That was a really underrated signing by those guys. So the fact that they're going to be in 2 wide receiver sets often, I think that Marquise Brown, look, they certainly didn't draft him to block. So when he's in there, there's going to be opportunities for him. And the other good thing is what he does and the way he wins is by running by you and getting open. We saw in the highlights whenever he got drafted, superb open field vision. If he was able to test outside of the Liz Frank injury, it would have been, I think he might have been the fastest at the entire combine. I mean, he looks like he could break a 4.3. I know it's weird to say, but he really, really does. I think he's faster than Andy Isabella. So if he can get that separation, even if you're worried about Lamar Jackson's accuracy, it's like he should be, Marquise Brown, Hollywood should be wide open. So I think that those are the good things. It's just the fact there is the vacuum, the fact that we can probably count on a little bit of growth from Lamar Jackson, and the fact that Marquise Brown should be used in ways that are conducive to fantasy scoring. Those are the good things. The only thing that's not good is there probably is going to be a pretty sufficient lack of volume, at least starting in 2019. We'll see if that can improve moving forward for dynasty purposes.
All right, so fantasy grade?
C plus.
C plus. All right, Nikhil.
Yeah, but I mean, for me, like I had
it's okay,
I
man.
had like a 2.2 GPA in college, so like a C plus is.
A C plus from Alex Dunlap, people.
Yeah,
that's
good.
actually workable. You can deal with that.
You can do it, man.
Let's keep going. We've only got like 4 wide receivers who have homes right now.
Right.
So let's grade these suckers out here. Nikhil Harry lands with the New England
never
Patriots.
give AJ Brown a grade. I think I would.
We will. We'll go. I was going in order here.
Oh.
I was going in order. Who's the host of this show
We
here?
got a pro on our hands.
Right? I'm a diva. I'm 100% a diva. I would admit that. Everybody knows I'm just shoving my way in here. So Nikhil Harry, he goes to the New England Patriots. Here's the one thing that I'll say about this, and this is not because I'm a New York Jets fan and I hate the New England Patriots. I'm saying this because we've seen Tom Brady when he doesn't gel with a wide receiver. If he doesn't like him, if there's even the slightest inkling that Nikhil Harry's not going to buy into the TB12 diet or the TB12 chiropractic care or whatever other kind of nut job cult stuff they do in the TB12 combine.
Yeah.
Okay, then you're telling me Tom Brady's going to get along with Nikhil Harry? So grade him out here for me with the New England Patriots.
Can I talk through it and then we'll give a grade?
100%.
Okay,
100%.
so I think. Okay, so for redraft or for dynasty? Because hey, dude, it makes a difference. How old's Tom Brady?
All right,
he's 41.
But he is 41, and for that, but with these rookies, let's just talk redraft here.
Okay,
because for the sake of argument, rookies in dynasty drafts are always going to get overvalued and picked up.
Okay, so for 2019 redraft. Okay, so we have a good target share opening up from the loss of Rob Gronkowski, Josh Gordon. Still up in the air. Outside of Julian Edelman and James White, who can you really trust in that passing game? And look, with Rob Gronkowski gone, that opens up a lot of red zone work for a guy like Nikhil Harry, who in college, his final year in college, a 45% market share of his team's receiving touchdowns. He was one of the more productive guys that we even have in our top 10 at roster watch with his 29% market share in receptions, a 35% market share in receiving yards, and a 45% market share in touchdowns. He is young. He's a contested catch monster. He's a guy who can get the football. They got it to him all the time on little screens, little bubbles, little gadget plays. You can run him on reverses, jet sweeps. You can line him up in the slot. You can line him up outside in the X. You can get off press, stems well at the line of scrimmage. People worry about his ability to separate. That's not anything that I worry about because I think using the elite traits that he does have, this is a 75th percentile athlete. So even though he didn't run the fastest 40 time, 4.53, really good with his other agility stuff and his explosive measurables, I think he's a guy who can get schemed open. And when he gets the football in his hands, it's watch out, man. He's a Dez Bryant kind of meets Sammy Watkins, meets Alshon Jeffrey. He's Byron's number 1 wide receiver in the class. He was my number 2 wide receiver in the class. So with all of that being said, and knowing that we're going to have Tom Brady for next year, I don't give it an A+. I don't agree with the people on Twitter who are coming after us with saying that we believe that Josh Jacobs probably should be the 1.01 in Dynasty regardless of where any of these other players land. And I'm becoming more and more confident about that as we see these guys continue to slide and the draft capital not being expended on them. But so while I don't agree he's the 1.01, I think that there's going to be a argument for him at the 1.02.
Okay.
And I think the landing spot is not an A+, but maybe an A, and more of like a B+ for Dynasty.
Okay. And if he doesn't buy into all the Tom Brady cult stuff,
he's going to buy into the Tom Brady cult stuff because that's what you do. You want to make money, right?
All right. Okay. Yeah. We're going to go back to you giving the F to AJ Brown and landing in Tennessee. But I just saw over here with the 56th pick, the Chiefs did take a wide receiver. It was, is it Mecole Hardman. So I'm curious as to your thoughts here initially on Hardman, or do you want to just...
Hold on, the Chiefs took Mecole Hardman?
Are you sure? I just saw it up there.
It looks like, when did that happen? Did they trade in?
I don't know. I think they traded in. Chiefs selected him in the second round, 56th overall.
So we are at, okay, so I don't know. I guess they traded back in to come get him. Well, do you know what that is? With McCole Hardman, how did they get this pick? I've been looking how they got the pick.
I just saw it. I caught it out of the corner of my eye because I was actually paying attention to you.
Live streaming.
That's what the live stream is all about, baby.
McCole Hardman.
All about the This Just In.
Do you know what, man? We talked about this I talked about this on the show with David Kitchen yesterday. McCole Hardman had props in the Vegas sports books about, which receiver goes off the board first, all this stuff. You kind of see him sticking out like a sore thumb at the end. You go, wait, what do they know? Because I don't have him ranked as highly, but you look at it, man. The 4.33, the 40. We know what's going on with Tyreek Hill.
Oh,
things are getting worse with Tyreek Hill today. They're getting worse.
Yeah, he's done. He's done. I don't see Tyreek Hill playing football this year.
4.33 speed. What people wanted to happen here was Andy Isabella. That's what they wanted.
Okay.
Because of the speed. McCole Hardman is a perfectly suitable option. And what do we know about these players from Georgia? The Riley Ridleys, the DeAndre Bakers, the DeAndre Walker. Some of these guys, the tight end Isaac Nauta. The NFL, it seemed like in scouts that I've talked to, seem to be a lot higher on these guys than I am. So McCole Hardman, if we just look at him as far as his production, we're going to see horrible production, just like we saw out of Riley Ridley, because everybody says in the context of that offense, it was a DeAndre Swift, Elijah Holyfield affair, and there were a lot of weapons to spread it around to. Riley Ridley, McCole Hardman, Nada. I'm blanking on the name of the other wideout, but a lot of these guys. So I mean, as far as the production, pretty bad. As far as the size, pretty small. 5'10" and a quarter, 187 pounds. He does have the 9-inch hands. I think the most important number that we can talk about with him is just that 4.33, that speed. Because if they're looking they could be looking to replace Tyreek Hill, and I mean, I don't need to tell you.
They should be looking to replace Tyreek.
Well, the NFL needs to just flush this guy, but. Until it happens, I think taking the speculative pick on this player that fits that exact archetype makes a lot of sense. If it were me, and I was going I might have preferred Paris Campbell.
Okay,
he's a 4.31 guy who can do a whole lot. Who did J.J. Arcega-Whiteside just go to?
Just went to the Eagles.
You got it. That's my dude. All right. So J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, my number 3 wide receiver in this class, 6'2", 225 pounds. He is a Mike Evans, Vincent Jackson clone. Just look at his ability to go up, get to the football in these contested catches. Per Pro Football Focus, more contested catches in college football than any other. I mean, he that looks like V-Jax. So you can go watch the tape, go watch the film. Just a absolute nightmare in the red zone. The only guy who we talked to earlier about, N'Keal Harry's his market share of team receiving touchdowns at 45%. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside 48%, more than anybody else in this class. He's a demon down there. So you get him lined up outside Alshon Jeffrey. We do know that they're looking to shop. They're looking to shop Nelson Aguilar. Mm-hmm. The way they move these players around, you got to remember they have Deshaun Jackson there now too. That's a lot of weapons from a market share perspective as far as the team targets. There are some mouths to feed, especially when you consider the fact that there's Zach Ertz, and we probably need to consider a little bit of a Dallas Goedert breakout with all of the 12 personnel that we saw in them last year. So there could be a little bit of trouble getting on the football field initially. But once Nelson Aguilar gets out of there, look, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is going to become a big part of this offense. I'm not sure that the volume is going to be there initially, but this is a good team with a good quarterback, a great scheme. I think for Dynasty, I think that for or am I giving a grade?
No, if you want to, you know what? That was the most emotional I've ever seen Alex Dunlap get. You guys just witnessed live. I know you did. That's
his athletic pedigree. His dad, Joaquin Arcega was a Portuguese legend basketball pro, and then his mom was like a track athlete and an Olympian. Now, this is a guy that's been, a basketball player. He's been elite in sports all his life.
He's been groomed for that since birth.
Unbelievable pedigree. Kind of reminds you of like Odell Beckham Jr.'s parents. It's kind of the same sort of same kind of stuff.
All right, give him a grade. Go ahead. Grade him out for landing in Philadelphia.
Just a B.
Just a B. Yeah. Because of Deshaun Jackson, the dual tight ends, Alshon Jeffrey there. I gotcha. Cowboys are on the clock right now. I was arguing with Jim Bowden earlier. I want them to go safety because that'll mean less Cowboys talk on the Fantasy Alarm Show. But there is a rumor here that they are looking at Hakeem Butler as a possibility here. I'm curious as to your thoughts. Where do you think Dallas goes with this pick?
Well, I'm not sure they would go with Hakeem, but is Jay Sternberger still on the board?
I do believe Sternberger is still on the board.
And I think Juan Thornhill is still on the board, who's a terrific safety prospect that can spin out to corner and help in two separate ways there. So I'm not sure that they would go wide receiver here. I think that they'll go with a tight end, or I think they would go with Thornhill.
A tight end. They just brought back Jason Witten.
Yeah, right.
Come on, there's plenty left in the tank. He's 137 years old. That's okay because he realized that he doesn't have any kind of a career in broadcasting, and he should be obviously just back on the field right now. The pick is in. The suspense is absolutely killing me. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to vamp for a few seconds here and talk smack about Jim Bowden and the Dallas Cowboys and how little we want to hear about that on the Fantasy Alarm Show.
I live in Austin, Texas, man. How much do you think I hear about these Cowboys?
Oh, all right. Well, you know what? I'm willing to bet that I actually still hear more about it 5 days a week with Jim Bowden than you do.
I'm sure. Yeah, but I think Hakeem Butler here would be an excellent fit. We know that Amari Cooper is, Scott Barrett at PFF has done a lot of work with the cornerbacks dependency and the strength of the cornerbacks that you go up with. Besides, Stephon Diggs and Amari Cooper sort of lead the NFL, and you target them against bad corners. So you get a guy like Hakeem Butler. Teams are going to have to sometimes use their best corner on that guy. He's 6'6", largest catch radius we've seen since probably Calvin Johnson. Yeah. The things you worry about with Butler, we can talk about him when he gets off the board. But I think in the context of that offense, it would make a little bit of sense. You could play Amari Cooper more over at the Z and not have him as a true X option, and let Big Hakeem Butler take over there at the X. And you feel like you got a couple twin towers on the outside. It would make sense to me. You got Randall Cobb now, who could play out of the slot with Cole Beasley gone. So.
But I mean, is that really the move that you want when you've got Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield and you already have Amari Cooper?
They need to take the tight end from A&M.
And then you take the tight end from A&M. You don't think that they've developed Jeff Swaim at all or Schultz?
Swaim, I think. Well, Swaim actually, believe it or not, I think he's actually now on the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But they did draft Dalton Schultz. They still have the kid. We can't even think of Blake Jarwin.
Jarwin. That's what I was thinking of. Yes.
Well, they're very easy to mix up.
Yeah, because they're all to me, they're all non-entities. They're tight ends who are like, yawn.
Yeah.
All right, we got Ed Too Tall Jones here at the podium looking super tall. I actually met him. I met Ed Too Tall Jones when I was 6 years old. And I got to tell you, I didn't even come up to his kneecap. It was that amazing how big this guy was. So he's announcing who the pick is, and it's defensive tackle Tristan Hill out of Central Florida. So not even remotely safety, not even wide receiver here.
I mean, interior defensive line has been a need for the Cowboys for the last 2-3 drafts. So I mean, you got to continue to build. You got to continue to build on it. They've got their edge basically set for the next 5 years. So I mean, keep on building up the middle of that defensive line. I think it's probably fine. I can't believe that Juan Thornhill keeps falling this far. It seemed like it would be a better fit, but Tristan Hill, if you look at what the Cowboys have done as far as their analytics over the course of the last 3 years since they've really taken over, using a ton of analytics from not only, they started out with using the catapult systems, now they're using the zebra systems, not only for practice stuff, but also, in their evaluation from teams, they can actually gather data. These teams who are clients of Zebra, I think I'm allowed to say this, but they can get data from the bowl games that are wired for the NFL stuff that they use for next gen stats. That's the same technology. The Cowboys have been utilizing a ton of it, and you can bet that the players that they've drafted are players who are athletes, and that's been a real staple of theirs. So maybe they didn't see that in Juan Thornhill, and they go with a player who's at a relative need as opposed to one that seems like it's a desperate need.
All right. I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break right now. That's wide receiver talk here from the NFL draft. Not a whole lot. Just think of how short the segment's going to be when we start talking running backs, which is what we're going to do when we come back next. For Alex Dunlap of Roster Watch, I'm Howard Bender of Fantasy Alarm. We're both of Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, and we'll catch you in a few. What's going on, everybody? Howard Bender here, Fantasy Alarm. With me here, Byron Lambert from Roster Watch. We're both from Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. We're here day 2 live in Nashville, the NFL Draft. And oh, baby, we finally got some action here, some real-time action. The Josh Rosen trade has finally gone down here. Arizona trades up in the second round. They get Miami's pick here at number 62 overall. They trade Rosen. We'll get the full details of the deal later on here, but the fact of the matter is that not only does Miami get its quarterback in Josh Rosen, but Arizona makes a real nice pick here and picks up a wide receiver in Andy Isabella. So let's talk. Where do you want to start here? Do you want to start with the wideout and then go to quarterback, or do you want to go the other way?
I mean, I think the quarterback is the big news. That's been the narrative behind this entire draft, basically, is what's going to happen at 1. How would Arizona reconcile the situation with the 2 quarterbacks on their hands? And look, they've been squeezed, right? I mean, the other teams in the league ran this thing out as far as they could before they gave something up for Rosen. You know, player they had to move up into, what was it, the top 10 last year to draft, and now it looks like they got a pretty modest second-round pick in exchange for him. And look, Josh Rosen, if he was in this year's rookie quarterback class, he would have been the number 2 ranked quarterback in this class. So we've been saying all along that Kyler Murray was the number 1 quarterback in this class, but Josh Rosen was the number 2 quarterback in this class, being that he's really, truly available. And so to come out and get the number 2 ranked quarterback in this class for a late second rounder, that's not too bad, you know?
It's not too bad if he pans out, if he fits the system. How does he fit with Adam Gase and the Dolphins right now?
Well, it's actually there's a new regime in Miami, and so that'll certainly remain to be seen. But one thing we know is the Dolphins were one of the teams that were heavily interested in Josh Rosen last year. So I'm not sure how much of their personnel department has transitioned with the new regime, but that's certainly a player they did a ton of homework on last year, and I would imagine they have a pretty good book on. And look, Rosen didn't really do anything to hurt his stock as a rookie in Arizona. That was a pathetic offensive line and just a pathetic coaching staff that he was playing for there. And I actually think he showed some toughness. So, you know, we can sit here and we can ask the same things about Daniel Jones and Drew Lock, and, you know, are these guys going to pan out in a couple of years? All I know is that the Dolphins used the lowest compensation of any of those guys to acquire their potential quarterback of the future. Of course, he won't have the 5-year contract. He's down to 4 years now, which is part of the beauty of the first round rookie contract. But look, Drew Lock just went in the second round. He's on a 4-year deal.
Okay, so, well, let me ask you here, as far as you're willing to basically just wipe the slate clean for Rosen. Forget about what went down in Arizona. It is what it is. Terrible offensive line, horrible scheme they had going there. So you're willing to just wipe the slate clean for this kid and give him. What about the, I don't want to say intangibles, but all the personality defects that they always throw down with him? I mean, what, standoffish, snotty, condescending a lot of times, you know, always felt like he was the smartest guy in the room. Does that take some of the shine off of it? It doesn't really matter.
Well, you wonder with Josh Rosen if there's something within league circles that had kind of metastasized around the league that's pushed his value down a little bit, why teams weren't more eager maybe to make a move for him, because, like I said, in terms of the film, it doesn't feel like he's done much to depress his value. So you raise a good point, and those were the concerns about Josh Rosen coming out of UCLA. You know, problem is that's just not, there's no black and white rule on that. I mean, typically we would tend to say that the quarterback of your franchise is basically the CEO of your on-field product. So over the years, we've really come to admire the guys like the Russell Wilson and the Andrew Lucks. I mean, those guys could run for president when they're coming out of college, basically. They're that polished up. They're organized. They're just true bona fide professionals. And that's really what you have to have as a CEO type figurehead that the quarterback is. So yeah, personality does factor into that. Being a leader of men does factor into that, and it's certainly something that you have to take into account, and it is a concern. It is a concern, but there is no black and white rule on that, and I just think you got to take a chance. I mean, the same questions can be raised about Kyler Murray, right? People are very, very polarized by the type of personality that he may actually have, but that didn't deter him from being a number 1 pick.
Definitely did not. All right, so let's talk about Arizona now. Well, actually, wait. Before we get to Arizona here, Josh Rosen as a quarterback in Miami right now, based on what you have knowledge of with the Dolphins, from a fantasy standpoint, is he a guy you just take a shot on, like super late in the draft? Do you think that he goes with a bigger crew? I don't particularly like the weaponry they have over there, but I mean, I could just be prejudiced again. Jets fan here. I'll always admit it. Here, my boys. But I mean, listen, I think Devontae Parker is completely overrated. I think he's garbage. I really do. And I don't like the what they've got to offer there in Miami at this point. So from a fantasy standpoint here, Bender's opinion notwithstanding, what do you think?
Oh, and I don't even expect him to come into the season necessarily as the starter, right? Because I believe they have Ryan Fitzpatrick down there in Miami now. Yeah. So I would expect him to get some starts somewhere over the course of the season, but he's going to come in and have to learn a new system. I see this as a good situation for Rosen to come in, not be pressured to start right away, and to kind of transition. In terms of fantasy, look, I've been to that training camp down there in Miami. It's so funny because Devontae Parker is an absolute Tarzan in practice. He's a freak. Everybody around that organization will tell you he's the best athlete on the entire team, but it just never, ever manifests an actual in-season play. So we've washed our hands, much like you have, of Devontae Parker. I guess, Kenny's still a viable, he's a viable, he's had some viability, but no, there's nobody to get real excited about. You know what this means is I could get more excited about all my Kalen Ballage shares that I've got super late in all my best ball drafts, because he's really the singular guy in Miami the fantasy players need to be focused on right now. He has a massive opportunity. You got to think with that quarterback situation, they're going to give the running backs a lot of touches there in Miami. That'll be the focal point of that offense. And with an ADP basically for free at the end of best ball drafts, Kalen Ballage has all the chops to take that lead job away from Kenyon Drake this year.
Okay. All right. Let's jump back to the wide receivers then. Andy Isabella, he's the guy who gets picked up by Arizona in this trade here. Give me your thoughts on him. Now working with Kyler Murray, Christian Kirk on the outside.
Well, we just had the three speed demons come off the board here in round two with Mecole Hardman, Paris Campbell, and Andy Isabella, a bunch of 4.3 40 guys there. Actually back-to-back, or close to back-to-back, I think, with Campbell and Isabella. Look, those guys are zone busters, man. Those guys are quick, shifty, fast zone busters that can create a lot of separation. So, I think in Arizona, I think that's a very good pick.
Good, solid move.
Yeah. I mean, think about Kyler Murray. He's going to break open on the scramble drill. You want guys like Andy Isabella and Christian Kirk who can get open in space and separate in a variety of ways. Those are versatile players. They can play, they can run a lot of routes, and they can play across the formation. So with that style of play, well, you better watch out with Andy Isabella with that style of play Kyler Murray's going to have.
Is this vaulting a number of Arizona guys up your fantasy draft boards here now? Like Kyler Murray taking over there, is this going to improve David Johnson? Is this going to improve, or is it actually going to hurt David Johnson with how mobile a quarterback Kyler Murray is? Does this hurt David Johnson much in the way that we saw Lamar Jackson poaching touchdowns, Cam Newton poaches touchdowns, every mobile quarterback poaches touchdowns? Will this hurt the value of David Johnson?
I don't think so. David Johnson, it feels in some ways, doesn't have anywhere to go but up after last year, right? Now, what Cliff Kingsbury told us at the NFL Combine is that he wants David Johnson to be the focal point of his offense. He's building the offense around David Johnson, and he wants to take him back to his 2016 numbers. Kyler Murray, at his size and stature, first of all, he's a pass-first guy. Mm-hmm. He is a very pass-first guy. So he can run, but he's a passer. So I don't think they're not looking to take a ton of carries away from David Johnson via Kyler Murray. And then with his stature, too. I mean, is that a guy you really want taking a pounding in short yardage at the goal line? I don't see it so much. So to me, it keeps the defense honest, having these weapons, having a quarterback who's a little bit mobile, who's a good passer. And I believe this continues to make David Johnson a viable rebound candidate that's presenting pretty good value in fantasy leagues. And look, Kyler Murray may be a very startable quarterback at times as a rookie in fantasy.
Okay, we'll jump back to Arizona. I'm seeing right here, Seattle trades up for pick number 64. They use it on DK Metcalf. Now, I was just talking to your partner, Alex, about Metcalf, and he basically said, he was like, from a physical standpoint, there's a lot to like. From a skill standpoint, there's a lot to like. But he ran 3 routes in college. And how is that going to translate to the NFL? He made some interesting comps. I think the most interesting one was Andre Johnson, was a name that he threw out there. Give me your thoughts here on Metcalf. And now let's talk about him in the realm of now in Seattle here. Still a run-first offense, but you've got Russell Wilson. Doug Baldwin has a hard time staying healthy. There's really, Tyler Lockett is the deep threat. How does DK Metcalf fit in here for you?
I've always viewed DK Metcalf in this draft as like the quintessential chess piece for certain offensive coordinators and their philosophy at the X wide receiver position. So you could kind of in a vacuum just remove all the stuff about his limited college production and take his athletic profile and just take some of the ability you have seen on the tape. And you just say, okay, this guy feels like an archetypal role for some offensive coordinators at the X wide receiver position. So I've seen him more as a commodity that would be hard for the league, too many coordinators in the league to pass on, just given his profile. And you're right, you look down at his comps and you say, well, not all these guys turned out to be great, but all of them were drafted pretty early. You got Andre Johnson, Demaryius Thomas, Rashad Perriman, Darius Hayward-Bay. It's a real boom-bust range here for DK Metcalf, right? But all those guys are first-round picks. And then, players like Josh Gordon, Martavis Bryant, even Tyrell Williams, guys that were drafted a little later, come to mind. I think that's kind of the range of wide receiver you're looking at, which is a huge range. But you can see that's a very specific role, most of those guys, that they'll fill at that X position. So ton of upside, obvious boom-bust candidate. But I see him as a chess piece, and that's likely how they're viewing him in Seattle, which has been very much a run-first offense. They've got Lockett, they've got Baldwin. I don't see they're not. I'm sure they see the upside with Metcalf, but I can't imagine they're bringing him in to feed him right off the bat. He's being brought in to stretch the field, to keep defenses honest, to run the vertical, to run the post. Those are things he can do. I was at the Ole Miss Pro Day. I was a little skeptical about DK Metcalf heading into that. And, I've been to a lot of these pro days. It wasn't a Mike Evans caliber pro day. He certainly wasn't in that league of things. But I left there saying that was a heck of a lot better than when I was here 3 or 4 years ago for Laquan Treadwell's pro day. Metcalf had a decent workout. He looks like a decent receiver out there. So didn't blow me away, but I left just saying, man, you don't see too many guys this big and this fast that can catch the ball on tape and put on a pretty good live workout like this that don't end up garnering some value in the draft. I'm really amazed he fell this far.
All right. Well, you know what? Let's take a break from the wide receivers. Let's talk running backs for a sec here. Josh Jacobs, he's gone. And it's Josh Jacobs. And he's literally the only running back who's off the board, isn't he?
Well, we did have Miles Sanders come off the board here just in the last few minutes.
In the last couple of minutes. Who took Sanders?
The Philadelphia Eagles, who are having an unbelievable draft, really. Andre Dillard, Arcega-Whiteside,
right.
Miles Sanders, taking some of the draft community's favorite players in this draft.
The Philadelphia Eagles not just pick up Jordan Howard from the Bears? Do they not already have an array of maybe, possibly, Corey Clement, Wendell Smallwood? They've got all of these guys in the backfield, and then I thought they were picking up Howard to be that between the tackles kind of guy there for them. What does Sanders bring to the table here that, is he going to push everybody else down?
Well, look, we know what their philosophy is in Philadelphia with the running back by committee. And you bring up the Wendell Smallwoods and the Corey Clements, and I think they've finally had it with those guys and have decided to bring in a good version of those players. That's the type of back they're looking for with Miles Sanders, but they want an actual explosive, good one who can be a difference maker and a game changer. So I do think long-term he has capability to be a quasi lead back. That would take a cultural and a philosophical change over time in Philadelphia for that to ever occur there. But in the short time, I actually see him as a pretty good running mate to Jordan Howard in a timeshare. I think he's a good complement and a big upgrade over Clement and Smallwood, and then maybe a player who in a couple years from now, when the sun sets on Jordan Howard, maybe at that point they're ready to hand it over to Miles Sanders to be a little more of a lead feature-ish type back.
Okay, so good
Dynasty.
Good. I was going to say good value in Dynasty. For redraft, not so much. Still, Josh Jacobs has the obvious most value in redraft leagues amongst rookie running backs that you're talking about taking now.
Sure, but you got to think Miles Sanders is going to be on waiver wire cheat sheets and waiver wire lists sometime this year.
Sure,
he's going to be a guy at min pricing somewhere along the line in DFS that we're all going to be interested in. So he's going to be kind of touch and go for sure, but that's definitely how I see it.
All right, let's talk about some of the other running backs who we're looking at coming off the board here. You have any names that you're really got a hankering for that you want to see and where you want to see them land?
I mean, certainly David Montgomery was a lot of people's number 2 back in this class. I think he was kind of neck and neck with Miles Sanders, a 2A, 2B, and I would expect him to come off pretty soon. He has a lot of Kareem Hunt to him. Obviously, there's a little bit of question about how much real playing speed and real burst he has on film and on the field. But David Montgomery, he tested fairly comparably to a Josh Jacobs at his pro day. He doesn't show that kind of burst necessarily on film. So that's I think teams are a little concerned, how much does he really translate? And he does have the junior profile, but he had a massive production and workload coming out of Iowa State. So it could be a little bit of the tread on the tires. I mean, you notice Miles Sanders and Josh Jacobs are 2 guys with no mileage on the tires.
Right.
They went bang, bang, 1-2. I think that could be a big part of it. But yeah, I mean, David Montgomery he's got tremendous 3-down capability. He's very hard to bring down on first contact, and certainly a really interesting player. So anybody who's looking for a 3-down type back, I mean, I think they have to be very interested in David Montgomery. And then, of course, there's Daryl Henderson and Damian Harris that are still hanging out there. I think Daryl Henderson is a nice maybe 1B ad. Like, I could have seen him with Jordan Howard.
Okay.
For sure, right? So the questions about Henderson are, how much real 3-down viability does he have in the NFL? And if a guy like that doesn't have 3-down viability, how much snap count is he really going to get, in a running back by committee? So I think that's the question. But you put him with a Jordan Howard, and that starts to make a lot of sense. So I could see Daryl Henderson getting into a spot like that where they're looking for that 1B, maybe a little lightning to somebody's, thunder, another guy to watch for there for sure.
All right. Any other running backs that you want to hit up?
Tons. Yeah.
All right. So give me a dark horse name of running back, and I don't care what day he goes in the draft.
Okay.
It doesn't matter to me whatsoever. But give me the guy that you're going to put the Byron Lambert stamp of approval on, roster watch certified. This is the guy you have to keep an eye out for, no matter where he lands right now in this draft.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, and I'm glad you characterized it like that, because there is actually one guy in this draft that I am way out in front of the rest of the industry on, and I'm actually head over heels for. I was trying to save it for tomorrow because I thought it might be a little too trashy to bring it up here.
No, let's do it now. Let's do it now.
My number 4 running back in the class, who I believe profiles very, very comparably to the top 3 backs in this class, is Alexander Madison out of Boise State.
Ooh, running on the blue, baby. Running on the blue.
He's got there's so much to love about Alexander Madison. He's got a very similar junior profile to Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, and Miles Sanders. He comes out of Boise State with the 3-down capability and the production that David Montgomery had. He tested at the combine in the vertical and the broad jump. He actually out-tested Miles Sanders, who was the talk of Indianapolis for how much he blew up the NFL Combine. A lot of Miles Sanders' interest has been in the athletic numbers that he generated. People forget Madison out-jumped him in the vert and the broad at the Combine. People try to knock him a little bit for his agility on tape. Finished in the top 7 in the 3-cone and the 20-yard shuttle at the NFL Combine. So this is a guy that people kind of slept on the numbers, and then you turn on the tape, he runs with tremendous leverage. I mean, he's very difficult to bring down on first contact, and he has outstanding 3-down capability. So I say, wait a second. He's got the same junior profile as Jacobs, Montgomery, as Sanders. He's got the same production as Montgomery. He performed nearly as well at the combine as Sanders, and he has the same profile in the 40-yard dash as Josh Jacobs, along with the same beastly body type that Josh Jacobs has. So my question is, what is there not to like about Alexander Madison, and why is he not ranked any higher?
Give it to me. I love that. I love that. You're going to need that. Are you in the Sirius XM post-draft draft tomorrow?
I'll have to ask Matt Deutsch about that one. I'm not sure about that.
Because if you're not, I'm getting myself some Madison. If you are, I'm stealing myself some Madison. I love that. All right, we're going to take a quick break here right now. I'm Howard Bender. This here is Byron Lambert from Roster Watch. You just got the sleeper of the draft, running back news right here, right now. Write it down. That's what you want. We'll be right back with more talk from the NFL Draft live here in Nashville. What's going on, everybody? Howard Bender of Fantasy Alarm sitting next to Byron Lambert of Roster Watch. We are both from Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. We're here day 2 in Nashville. We're about 10 picks into the 3rd round of the NFL draft. And oh, baby, we got stuff to talk about here. We've covered some running backs. We've covered some wide receivers. We covered the Josh Rosen trade. But here in pick number 73, the Bears make a trade with the New England Patriots, and they move up a couple of spots. And lo and behold, Byron Lambert, who do the Bears take?
Boom, Howard Bender. It was finally the stick of big dynamite for our fantasy leagues and our dynasty fortunes that we love. David Montgomery, one of my favorite running backs in the class. There's been so much just clamor out of Chicago Bears fans for this pick, and to see them actually move up and target a guy like David Montgomery, a 3-down back at 222 pounds. After shipping Jordan Howard off, this is a golden opportunity. He may not be in line to be RB1, in redraft because of the Josh Jacobs situation in Oakland, but all of a sudden, David Montgomery very, very much in the mix for RB2 in our fantasy leagues.
All right, what does this mean, though, as far as the Bears' scheme and the usage of Tariq Cohen?
What? Don't we know? I think we know what Tariq Cohen is, right?
Yeah. I'm just saying how much, let's face it, Matt Nagy lied to everybody last year in the preseason. Jordan Howard's improving in his pass catching skills. Jordan Howard's my number 1 guy. Jordan Howard. And then, boom, it was all Tariq Cohen right from the start. So he's got a place in a Nagy offense. The question is, does David Montgomery's presence now push Tariq Cohen to an even smaller role?
I think Tariq Cohen right now, the conservative thing would be to project him for the same exact workload that we saw out of him last year, because I think we could have projected him for a reasonable increase before this pick. But this is certainly, they didn't just move up to draft David Montgomery in the top of the 3rd round, the second best back, 3-down bigger back in this class. They didn't make that move for this guy to come sit on the bench. He's going to come in and compete. So, you get the signing of Mike Davis. I think that was their contingency plan. Worst case scenario, they're going into the season with Tariq Cohen and Mike Davis. In that situation, you were going to like Mike Davis. In that situation, you got to expect Tariq Cohen was going to get, maybe a 10 to 15%, 20% boost there, right? But now you add Montgomery in the mix, and I just say the conservative thing to do is dial back your expectations for Tariq Cohen to whatever it was he was producing at that level last year. And anything you get in addition to that is like the cherry on top.
Okay, love that. Gravy's good. You don't get to be this size without loving gravy. And I'm telling you, man, I think that's a good move there. And it's obviously, so David Montgomery on your board now in rookie drafts, pretty high up.
I mean, he's got to be the clear number 2 at this point. I mean, so far we've got Miles Sanders to Philadelphia.
You've got him better than any wide receiver.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I mean, you could really love N'Keal Harry. I mean, I'm a huge N'Keal Harry guy. It was my wide receiver 1 in this class. I think he's probably the wide receiver 1 if he'd been in last year's.
Well, you know what? Let me ask you then here about N'Keal Harry, because I actually had this conversation with Alex.
Okay.
We've all seen what happens when Tom Brady doesn't like a guy. When Tom Brady doesn't gel with a player, it not only shows personally in the locker room, it shows on the field. Now, I'm not saying that N'Keal Harry is the same or worse as like a Kenbrell Tompkins was, but what we saw, yeah, right. I mean, listen, we saw Tom Brady really struggle with his receivers, and I said it jokingly to Alex, but I kind of meant it. If N'Keal Harry doesn't buy into the whole TB12 diet, the TB12 clinic, and all that other stuff, where does that put him on the page with Tom Brady? Now, granted, Tom Brady's 182 years old, and he's probably not long for this team. So N'Keal Harry down the road, great, that's fine. But for the beginning part of his 5-year contract as a first-round pick, I mean, where does that kind of put him as far as with the Patriots?
I mean, I think it's very reasonable to counter the notion that there's all these available targets and red zone targets for Harry in New England. I think it's very viable to counter that with the idea that a rookie wide receiver is anything but a lock for production in a place like New England. And so I think even Harry at probably the clear wide receiver 1 at this point in terms of fantasy, but not without question marks. Not without question marks. And so when we compare him cross-positionally to the running backs, I got to say, I mean, I probably would still lean towards David Montgomery at this point in terms of just in a vacuum, which rookie do I like to contribute a little more. But that's probably a natural breaking point. I think at this point you're seeing Josh Jacobs out in front at number 1, and then I'd have no problem if you start making decisions at 1.02 between Harry and Montgomery.
Okay, I can dig that. So set your boards up properly, people. This is what we got going on. So talk to me now. Round 2 out of the way. We're a third of the way through round 3 right now. Talk to me here. Just gut reaction. Winners, losers so far. Is there a player who fell that you didn't expect to fall as bad as aside from Jawan Taylor falling, all the way down to where he fell. DK Metcalf took a huge drop where a lot of people thought he was going to go. But from your standpoint, from your big board, I'm sure you've had your mocks over on Roster Watch there. Biggest surprise, I'd say, for you.
Well, I'm certainly extremely impressed with what John Elway is doing in this draft. And I think if you put it together with what he did in last year's draft, all of a sudden you kind of start arriving the idea you may have to start giving him a little bit of credit. And there's sure a lot of haters out there in terms of John Elway and his personnel skills and his acumen as a general manager. But maybe I'm a little bit of a contrarian, and I think I'm going to go to bat for John Elway a little bit here. I'm just blown away that he was able to not get sucked in, trade out of that 10 pick, move back, pick up the extra picks, get Fant, a difference maker at tight end. You don't see tight end prospects like Noah Fant every year, right? That just doesn't happen every year.
We're just throwing Jake Butt away.
Oh, toss him in the trash.
Jake Butt's in the dumpster.
Yeah, I mean, he's been so injury prone, and he's a guy I've kind of always liked as a deep sleeper, in Denver. But I think that ship has sailed. And
fun to say on the air too. I'm not gonna lie. It's not fun to say, Jake Butt.
But then you come back and you use your picks and you get Dalton Reisner, my favorite player from the entire Senior Bowl this year. That kid's a monster. Reminds me very, very much of Kyle Long in Chicago. That's a heck of a player to add to your team. And then you get Drew Lock. I mean, I've said from the get-go, Drew Lock just cannot be a top 10 pick. We are living on the moon, or we're living somewhere where physics don't apply anymore. If Drew Lock is a top 10 pick, fine if you want to take him, fine if you like him. We can knock him as a prospect here and there. I don't think he was a top 3 or 5 guy had he been in last year's class. But to move all the way back in the second round and then get your guy,
still get him, yeah.
Now we're talking. This is a guy that has some Josh Allen, Carson Wentz type appeal. So you've got Joe Flacco. These were shrewd moves and good picks. A year after John Elway, we'll see. The jury's still out, but he appeared to pretty much crush the draft last year with quite a few good picks. So. I've been very impressed with what's going on there. And then, look, we've said all along that one of the big narratives of this entire draft season, at least from our perspective, has been the quality of the offensive line depth in this draft. And we've said all along one of the most exciting components of this year's draft was going to be the ability for teams that need to fix their leaky offensive lines, the teams with the bad offensive lines. They're going to have a real opportunity this year to entirely fix and overhaul their offensive line at value in this draft. And I mean, we're already seeing it. We've seen Minnesota attempt to do that.
Bradbury at center was a great pick.
Bradbury is a monster. He's a stud. We've seen, nobody talked about it in the second round, really. We saw Green Bay go after a center, Elton. I'll have to look up his name. I know. And then we got Eric McCoy to the Saints a few picks later. Two very, very good center prospects from the Senior Bowl. Those are teams where you want to continue to bolster the offensive lines, but then you have Houston. They go back-to-back offensive lines. Have
we seen a team in more dire need of fixing their offense? How many sacks did Deshaun Watson take last year?
And you can't. He's he's
ridiculous,
and he's not the biggest guy, right? He's
Right.
not Cam Newton. You really can't have him out there taking those kind of hits. So it was Eric McCoy, the center from Texas A&M. The 16th pick of the second round was to the New Orleans Saints, and then just before that, it was Elton Jenkins to the Green Bay Packers, center out of Mississippi State, that went to the Packers there. So those were a couple guys in the second round I don't think anybody's talking about that are very good picks. The two good teams with good offenses, with good quarterbacks and enticing running back situations. So, I just see a lot of teams making shrewd moves like that.
You think a lot of fantasy football and research for fantasy football has definitely evolved over the years. Definitely evolved. And I would say probably in the last 3 years, maybe, we've heard them pound the drum more and more about paying attention to the offensive lines. Obviously, that's something that you really have to pay attention to. It's something that really matters. And I think that a lot of people, do you still think a lot of people overlook that? Like, does the casual fantasy footballer still overlook that kind of thing? Or if they subscribe to Roster Watch or to Fantasy Alarm, or they listen to us on the channel here and they hear us pound the drum, is that sinking in enough?
I mean, it's funny because I kind of feel like we were some of the original pioneers and purveyors of the offensive line data in this industry. I mean, that was something that was kind of a real internal analytic for us for a long time, and we made an outward-facing offensive line rankings in the preseason. We began making those about 5 years ago and actually putting them up on the site, kind of taking our internal evaluations there and turning those out customer
back
facing,
and be like,
right?
This is why we do so well.
Yeah, so we've always viewed the offensive line as important to the. It's a great way to split hairs. Look, if you got two guys that you think are kind of tied in your rankings, I want the guy on the team with the good offensive line, right? So, and there's a number of things that you'll look at like that. So yeah, I mean, you get excited if you're a Houston Texans fan, and you got Deshaun Watson that you need to protect, and you got a running game you'd like to somehow get going a little bit, and you come out and you go bang bang. I mean, that's good for fantasy. That's good for real football. The Eagles took Andre Dillard. They're trying to stay a step ahead of the curve with Jason Peters getting old over there. They've got a good offensive line. They want to address the need before it becomes a crisis. Yeah, with what otherwise is a good roster. I mean, these are just shrewd moves.
I said it a couple of years ago when the Falcons picked up Alex Mack in free agency. I was like, that's a move right there that's going to be a game changer for the Falcons. They needed to solidify the offensive line with a center who is going to help, lead that charge there. And lo and behold, that's what happened. So, I mean, yeah, listen, I think that it's definitely something that gets overlooked. I like the fact that, you consider that a good solid tiebreaker. I do. Most people, it's just kind of funny in the fantasy world that they don't pay attention to it. So, if you start releasing them 5 years ago, dude, power to you. Thank you. Roster Watch Nation, obviously super appreciative of it. No doubt about it.
I definitely think it's a thing people look at now, right?
You have to. Yeah. You can't, that's the thing. If you're going to sit here and you're going to talk next-gen stats and all the other stuff that's going out there and all the analytics, we got Jeff Radcliffe downstairs at the main desk, and he's like, and he's like crunching numbers. He's trying to do it all like that. I mean, when you have stuff like that now, it's like the nerddom from fantasy baseball just crept on over to fantasy football, and it's become a different story here. It definitely has.
It's gotten so much more competitive, right?
Yeah,
the average fantasy football player is much better than he used to be.
Oh yeah. But listen, Have I ever shared that with you, my philosophy on that? You guys at home, you'll love this. You've heard this on the Fantasy Alarm Show all the time. It takes skill, intelligence, and tenacity to win at fantasy baseball. But damn it, any mouth-breathing knuckle dragger can win a fantasy football league if he can get lucky on the waiver wire and he makes that pick. I mean, that's the way it was. Now, yes, I agree with you. The analytics have gotten stronger. The offensive line research has gotten stronger. I do an article over at Fantasy Alarm every year about coaching systems. and how you have to understand.
That's another one.
You know,
right?
you have
That's
to understand.
What kind of system is this?
What's the system? What's the blocking scheme? Like, I mean, these are things that, yes, even I, as an original fantasy football player, you know, 2 decades ago, what systems? Well, I don't care. Oh, I got Drew Bledsoe as my quarterback. I'm super psyched about that. Like, I mean, that was, you know, it was the way it was 20 years ago. Now it's a totally different story.
Well, think about how most starting rosters have gotten deeper now over the years. It used to be the old standard ESPN roster was 2 wide receivers, 1 running back, and maybe a single flex. I mean, these days, starting lineups are blown out a couple spaces larger than that. So people are going deeper, having to go deeper into rankings to pick players to actually get into your starting lineup. And I just think it's across the board become, you know, just more competitive maybe.
Yeah. Oh, no, I would definitely agree. I definitely think it's gotten more competitive, which I'm actually more appreciative of. I'm more appreciative of the fact that it has gotten competitive because, yeah, it was very easy to win my home league. And I love, listen, all my friends out there who are watching, I love you. I really do. And my wife's a big fantasy football player. I mean, it's that whole thing. Now it's, you know, all these stats are coming out and she's suddenly losing interest.
Well, you know that the FSTA in their most recent demographics report reported that of all fantasy players in North America, that females were almost constituting nearly 30% of them.
Oh, yeah, dude.
That's fantastic.
I track FA Nation female population, and I love it. I love it. I'll give some shout-outs here. I'll give some shout-outs to Steph Gregory and Cheyenne Bailey, 2 of the biggest badasses in fantasy football. 2 of my favorites from FA Nation, man. They are an unbelievable pair of ladies who just crush it in fantasy football. And they were both like, as soon as they heard that I was doing an Alliance of American Football League at Fantasy Alarm, they were all over it.
Oh, that's cool.
They were all over it. And what happened? Before the season went out, they ended up like the 1994 Montreal Expos. They both had the best records in the, you know, the two top records of the league. They were the 2 division leaders. And their teams were crushing it. Absolutely crushing it. So I love that. Roster Watch Nation ladies out there?
Yeah, there's definitely quite a few of them. You know how we do it, Howard Bender.
Oh, I don't know. Is that how you roll over there? I don't know, because listen, I do actually, because I'm going to give a shout out to one Emily Dunlap.
She deserves a very big shout out for putting up with all of us for many years.
Clearly outplayed her husband in the Dirty Laundry Fantasy League that I started out.
She's a good player.
She was a great player. Unfortunately, she doesn't get to play anymore because her husband got the couple relegated out of the league.
Because he couldn't figure out how to do the waivers.
Because he couldn't figure out how to do waivers, and he was too proud to ask. There's a lesson for you out there, people. If you can't figure out your system, your waivers, whatever, just ask somebody. I'm sure if you asked your commissioner, he'd be happy to help you out there. So now that I've just sold out your buddy completely over Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, somebody can sell me. I don't really care. It
looks like we've had a couple of pretty fantasy relevant picks just come in off the board. Some very interesting ones right here. So boom at the number 10 pick of the 3rd round, it was Chicago with David Montgomery. We discussed that a few minutes ago. Immediately after that, pick number 11, the Buffalo Bills take Devin Singletary, running back out of Florida Atlantic. One of the more polarizing prospects in this NFL rookie draft class, but I'll tell you, probably the most exciting prospect that I watched on film. So a very, very exciting prospect to bolster that backfield. Look, that's what they want to do in Buffalo. They've got Yeldon now. They've got McCoy now. They've got Gore now. They got Singletary. We'll see if Gore makes the roster. I guess maybe he could be in peril.
I don't think Gore's never going to not make a roster.
I think he's going to make the roster, and I expect this is what the Bills want to do, right? So you got to love this. They're going 4 deep at running back now. They got Ed Oliver.
Mm-hmm.
I believe they have addressed the offensive line in this draft.
Second round pick. I think they picked up an offensive lineman.
Yeah, the Buffalo Bills did. So I really like what they're doing. And Devin Singletary, let me get to my notes here on Devin Singletary. So he was my number 10 running back in the class. My comps for him were Dion Lewis, Jaquiz Rogers,
Mike Davis, Ito Smith, and Charlie Garner. And
Charlie Garner.
He's so Devin Single, a junior out of Florida Atlantic, very nifty runner, excellent feet, vision, patient and instincts, excellent on first contact, has an elusive knack to create huge plays. His position-specific traits in terms of his makeup, his DNA as a running back, really through the roof. His agility testing at the combine was the big question on Devin Singletary, kind of a diminutive running back at 5'7", 203. You wonder what kind of limitations he may have at the next level, but certainly a bananas running back. If you want to get excited at night, just go up to YouTube and turn on some Devin Singletary highlights, and that is a fun player to watch. So interesting pick there by the Buffalo Bills in terms of fantasy relevance. Not going to have much relevance this year. I think he's a Jaquiz Rogers this year for them, which is fantasy irrelevant, right, Howard?
It's like fantasy nightmares right there. Absolutely. All right, so let's go through the rest of it. Who else
Green
came
Bay
off
Packers,
the board?
Jace Sternberger, John Hanson's guy downstairs.
Loves him.
Aggie, tight end from Aggie Land in Texas, College Station, Texas A&M.
Are we ever going to see a tight end from Green Bay be fantasy relevant, though? I mean,
I don't
think
it's possible.
What astounds me, a lot of people were sitting there complaining about the fact that Green Bay, with 2 picks in the first round, didn't get Aaron Rodgers another weapon. And all I'm thinking of is, you know what? I mean, you picked up 5 wide receivers last year in the draft.
That's right.
You either have to try and develop these guys here, or if you're going to throw out your entire draft. Like, there's a big difference between Arizona throwing out their first pick in Josh Rosen and starting over with Kyler Murray, than wasting an entire year's worth of draft picks and saying, screw it, none of you guys panned out, and we've got to move on. So I like the fact that Green Bay didn't do that, but now they come in here and they pick up a tight end, which has been a desolate position for them since what? Jermichael Finley? Was he like the last?
That was the heyday of the Aaron Rodgers fantasy tight end.
That was like the last fantasy tight end.
Look, and Jimmy Graham's still currently on the roster. I mean, I know John Hanson is downstairs hooting and hollering.
Is he touching himself? What do you think? Do you think he's touching himself?
Is all of a sudden, on the map.
Like under
one
the
of the tight
desk.
ends to own here. Yeah, he's stuck on some kind of 600 yards, 7 touchdown, 50 target projection. But I just, the question with Sternberger is his blocking capability. So that's the whole. For a tight end to be relevant, he has to be able to really stay on the field. And these guys that can't block, ultimately, they can't play on this field and get a big enough snap count to really be fantasy viable. So you just worry a little bit. A very good receiver, very productive receiver coming out of A&M. You just worry, how ready is he to contribute immediately in any kind of viable snap percentage, especially if Jimmy Graham stays on the roster, which I think at this point there's not been any speculation otherwise.
2 tight end sets, and you just leave him in there and just until the kid gets the blocking down.
Well, Jimmy Graham, another guy who's really been a struggle as a blocker in his career.
Jimmy Graham's still living off of his days in New Orleans. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, he's never even remotely touched those numbers, nor do I ever see him touching those numbers again. It was a special time there. It was just great chemistry with Drew Brees, and he just hasn't been to a team since. Like, Seattle didn't deal with it well. Green Bay isn't dealing with it well. I mean, we've seen that pattern right there. So I don't know, man. Sternberger, future. Again, you got to think that Green Bay is obviously saying, well, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be our quarterback forever. Jimmy Graham's going to die sometime.
Yeah, no, I mean they're and he's probably a guy that was fairly high on their board at this point.
Yeah,
Packers in a luxury situation, and maybe just be able to do that. A lot of these other teams really drafting for need. That's always an interesting thing to observe in the draft. Is we always want to talk about playing or taking best player available. The reality of this situation is that's rarely what happens. Teams draft for need. By default, you have to basically. There's no way to grade these guys so precisely that you can say this guy is definitely better than this guy when I'm the guy pick 100 or pick
101. At some point, you say, well, I like both these guys, but this is the position that I need. Right? And
Absolutely.
so interesting to see how that kind of intersects at the draft. But and a lot of teams really going after those needs. And look, right at pick 13 of round 3, a big need for the Washington Redskins. It wasn't Paris Campbell, but they did go get Terry McLaurin to put with his old college quarterback, Dwayne Haskins. Give him another pass catcher with Paul Richardson, eternally on IR, and Josh Doxson just
being Josh
cannot
Doxson.
get off the mat in the NFL. We know we've got Trey Quinn there that we're hoping to replace. Trey Quinn, a golden son.
Yeah. Here we go. Let's do this, because if you guys tuned in on the live stream yesterday, and you saw Alex and Byron talking Trey Quinn, there was like a little between the whole like Trey Quinn's name came up, and you guys were like, So give me the rundown on Trey Quinn then.
Well, Trey Quinn was the all-time leading high school wide receiver in the whole United States when he came out of high school. He was, as of a few years ago, he was the last true freshman to start in the LSU offense. He had a falling out with Les Miles.
Okay.
And left LSU and went to SMU. Played for 1 year at SMU and had an absolute monster opposite of Cortland Sutton. I went to SMU's pro day to scout Sutton and Trey Quinn, and came away impressed with both of them in different ways. But Trey Quinn with big 10-inch hands, big, huge hands, right? And he's kind of like a Cole Beasley, but bigger. So he's a big, strong slot guy that I think has the requisite quickness and speed to get it done in the NFL at that position. So he's been a guy that we've said all along, man, he's a good player that people are sleeping on. We said it when he was drafted last year. I think it was in the 7th round they took him last year. And we've always said Jamison Crowder was going to be leaving in free agency. We knew that was going to happen, as we've been kind of looking at the dynasty construct of the Washington Redskins. And so from day one, we've just thought Trey Quinn had a pass. How to pass to something. And then you think about Case Keenum, who's done pretty well with kind of the Stephon Diggs and the Emmanuel Sanders. Not that Quinn's one of those. Terry McLaurin, in fact, is maybe a little bit more of one of those type of guys. But a slottish type receiver. There had seemed to be some chemistry there with Keenum. This is obviously before we knew Haskins was drafted. So that's where all the interest in Trey Quinn kind of lied, in the overall suckiness of the other wide receivers there, right?
It's so bad. They're really so bad. Like the fact that Jamison Crowder came to the Jets just really kind of saddens me a little bit. It does. I'm not going to lie.
Trey Quinn is a tough, hard-nosed dude.
Okay.
Like a no-nonsense, eat, sleeps, football kind of guy. So I don't know. There's just a lot that we've always really admired about him. But, Terry McLaurin right here, wide receiver out of Ohio State, a versatile player that I think can play some slot but can be moved around outside. It's actually really what they need, right? Because they don't know if they have a slot, and they don't know really what they have at outside receiver. So somebody with a little bit of versatility here, another pass catcher. McLaurin is a player that we scouted at the Senior Bowl, had a very nice week there. Not as good of a week as maybe Deebo Samuel that you've heard so much about, but he was kind of like a poor man's Deebo Samuel at the Senior Bowl. A couple of drops, but really able to get open in a variety of ways and made quite a few plays against plenty of DBs who are being drafted right now to play in the NFL.
Right.
So I like the fact that if you're going to draft Dwayne Haskins, you're going to try to put some weapons around this guy, and maybe one that he's a little bit familiar with. Does Terry McLaurin have any fantasy value this year?
No, probably not.
But he's a dynasty guy that I can get interested in a second, third, fourth round of a dynasty rookie draft.
It's really hard. Excuse me. It's hard to believe that there are any guys really. I mean, with the exception of like you said, Josh Jacobs. There are possibilities for David Montgomery. You look at some of the wide receivers there, and are they guys who you're gonna, there's nobody out there right now who, if you're just doing a redraft league, okay, there's nobody out there who I see going earlier than the, 10th or 11th round. Like I receiver-wise that's going to make any kind of a major impact here.
Yeah,
and I mean, this seems to be this seems like to me that the type of draft that really it shines bright for dynasty, but not as bright for redraft.
Yeah, and it's still going to be a landmine in dynasty, right? You're going to have to really carefully step through this minefield to pick the right guys in your dynasty rookie draft here, because here's the thing about this draft is the elite quality at the top was non-existent, right? So there's nobody that you just love that you just have to have. So all of these guys are some type of projection. There's very little degree of separation between all of them. However, it is a pretty good class, and it's a deep class. So there's a lot of guys that are pretty good, but not locks, that you're going to have to sort through. And we just know that numbers-wise, a bunch of those guys are going to bust, and some of them are going to turn out to be, diamonds in the rough. It's going to be a little bit of a minefield in our dynasty rookie draft.
It's definitely going to be. All right, let's go through here and let's talk about who else we like from the skills position, possible fantasy value moving forward. As we sit here on draft day here, day 2, we're at the 84th pick overall. It is round 3. The Kansas City Chiefs are on the clock right now. I'm sure they'll have to try for yet another wide receiver to fill the disgusting, nauseating holes that are developing on that team because of stupid people. But I don't want to get too common. I don't want to commentate on it too much. Right? Like you're shuddering. So let's go. Who's the next skill position guy that we can talk about here after your McLaurin boy?
In terms of another guy that we can get behind in our fantasy leagues.
Well, I don't want a guy I'm going to get out in front of.
Well, I mean, you just mentioned the disgusting hole in Kansas City.
Oh, it's so gross,
I think it's pretty hard to get behind Mecole Hardman as a rookie just because of the limited production coming out of college. And, I mean, literally, Mecole Hardman is most people's, ranked somewhere between wide receiver 10 if you were very generous. I think in NFL circles, he was obviously ranked a lot higher. But somewhere between people's wide receiver 10 and 20. A little skeptical how much he can contribute as a rookie, but the Chiefs, I believe, moved up to take Mecole Hardman.
They did, actually.
They targeted him.
Surprised you, didn't it?
Yeah, surprised me huge. You saw my face.
You guys gotta go check that out. Just so you know, there's a post. Where is it? On at Sirius XM Fantasy on Twitter. The Mecole Hardman pick. Go look for Byron
my head literally pop off of my neck.
It was like a Rock'em Sock'em Robots, and he gets hit I don't want to say hit in the chest because that's got a horrible connotation these days now. But he was hit. His head popped up. His eyes got like sock puppets. And he went bananas.
Yeah, it was an insane feeling. But that could be a gaping hole, right? And here's the thing about Mecole Hardman it's so interesting to me that he was drafted this early because I got to the end of my evaluations. I have a model and a grading system I rely on and trust very, very much at this point. I'm usually very comfortable with the rankings that it generates. They all pass the eyeball test for me. I have him ranked at wide receiver 19. Jeff Ratcliffe says he has him ranked at wide receiver 20. But the thing that was so interesting to me was it was so hard to rank him higher because of his limited production coming out and because he's a little bit on the smaller side. But at the end of the day, I couldn't stop thinking of Ted Ginn. Primarily, Ted Ginn was the guy I kept thinking about, and a little bit of Marquise Goodwin. Those ended up being my comps for him. And so you say, wait a second, there's something here because for some reason, I can't get my grade any higher on this guy. Can't get my ranking any higher on this guy in a pretty deep class. But boy, these comps sure are a lot better than the comps you usually have for your 20th ranked wide receiver. Right. So how do we reconcile this? And I think that's what the Chiefs and maybe a lot of the other NFL circles saw on the tape with Mecole Hardman. I mean, Ted Ginn hadn't been a stellar career, but he was a first-round pick, right? And, sure. I think he can think about it. That's the kind of guy who can play a Tyreek Hill-ish
type role
sure. A little bit. So I'd say Mecole Hardman is somebody who out of nowhere, out of left field, you have to have some interest by default, just considering circumstantially, right?
Yeah, well, I think that was the definite thing, and we're actually looking at it live right now. Dante Hall about to announce the Chiefs selection here, round 3, pick 84. We're watching it live, waiting for that name to pop out here. Very curious to see where they go, and it's defensive tackle Kalen Saunders.
Beast at the Senior Bowl. This guy is a monster. He can actually he's huge. He's a huge, almost like nose tackle type, and he can do backflips, standing backflips.
Stop it. A 325-pound guy
I guarantee they're going to show it on the highlights right now. Kalen Saunders is a little brick house. Really impressed us at the Senior Bowl, was one of the big winners coming out of the Senior Bowl, had a lot of good press. Really an extraordinary athlete for somebody of his size and stature. So the Chiefs bulking up with Frank Clark.
Yeah.
With Kalen Saunders here along that defensive line a little bit.
Well, I mean, listen, they let D Ford go. They let Justin Houston left during free agency also. So I mean, they definitely needed to patch up that front seven.
Here you go.
Look at him. Oh my Lord. Acrobatic. Are you kidding me? He just went and did a cartwheel into a round out into a backflip.
I can't believe you knew what all those things were called.
I'm kind of making it up as I go along, to be perfectly honest. Sounded good, though,
I think
didn't
you
it?
knocked it out, man.
Come on, baby. All right, guys. I'm Howard Bender. This is Byron Lambert. We're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, we'll finish off today's round 3 action here, give you some other surprises, some exciting NFL stuff to help you through your dynasty leagues, your redraft leagues, whatever you got going on here. We'll be right back. Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio.
Memphis State radio network. They dropped the state. Memphis is where Daryl Henderson toiled. Now he will play behind Todd Gurley with the L.A. Rams. Is he one of the top 10 rookies as of right this moment? We send things up to the streaming desk right now from the Fantasy Alarm. Howard Bender and Byron Lambert of Roster Watch. Guys, take it away.
All right, thank you, Michael. Howard Bender here sitting next to Byron Lambert. We are in the Sirius XM green room here at the draft. We've been doing a bunch of live streaming, scribbling down names and doing analysis. And my man Byron Lambert here has a top 10 rookies for redraft leagues in fantasy for right now.
Well, this is obviously a very fluid list as the information keeps coming at us rapid fire up here. But of course, the industry consensus heading out of day 2 is that Josh Jacobs, the only round 1 running back selection from this class, uncontested for the lion's share of carries in Oakland, the number 1 fantasy prospect as it stands. Number 2, I went with the sure thing here. I went with Kyler Murray. I think he's in line to be a quarterback 1 as a rookie on the heels of his 4.3 speed and his big play pass first mentality. I just think there's question marks with the rest of these guys as much as we like them. That's going to be N'Keal Harry with New England, probably the best wide receiver in this class. Should have a ton of red zone targets on his plate. And then David Montgomery. It looks like Matt Nagy has potentially found his Kareem Hunt there with the Chicago Bears, a 3-down back that has a mega opportunity to fill some of the void that's left by Jordan Howard. And guys, this is where I would have gone with Deebo Samuel, but the fact that the 49ers took Jalen Hurd just a round later, we've still got Marquise Goodwin, Dante Pettis, George Kittle. I just don't know what's going on in San Francisco. We'll have to figure that out later. For now, I think we can feel safe in going with back-to-back at tight end with T.J. Hawkinson and Noah Fant, 2 elite, uber elite tight end prospects that landed in juicy situations with plenty of targets available to them. And then, of course, we're getting the news right now that Doug Baldwin's playing career may be in peril. So I think this is a time when we can start thinking about DK Metcalf as an upside play in Seattle. And then, of course, I like anything connected to Andrew Luck's arm when it comes to fantasy. Paris Campbell, a Percy Harvin type, in line for a pretty good role right here off the bat as a rookie in Indianapolis. A.J. Brown has the opportunity to become the wide receiver 1 in Tennessee over Corey Davis. And Daryl Henderson could be a freak in Sean McVay's zone running scheme. What do they know about Todd Gurley? There's a lot of smoke where there could be some fire.
Very nice. There you go. That's going to do it for our top 10 rookies for right now. Again, a very fluid list. I'm Howard Bender. He's Byron Lambert. Back to you, Mike Dempsey.
Thank you, gentlemen. Great work. And, fluid list to the point where we may just pour it right out right now.